Marbel woke up to an empty side of the bed again. The sheets beside her were cool, untouched, carrying no trace of warmth. She stared at that space for a few seconds, hoping, just for a moment, that maybe Davis had stepped out briefly. But deep down, she already knew the truth she didn't want to face. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your chest and makes you aware of every thought running through your mind. A soft kick from her baby pulled her gently back into the moment. She placed a hand over her belly and whispered, "I'm okay. We're okay." But she didn't believe it. She sat up slowly, trying to steady her breath. Davis had been working late far too often, so often that their home, once full of laughter and silly morning routines, now felt more like a place she simply slept in. Something had been bothering her for weeks, and tonight, that feeling was stronger than ever. She slid her feet into her slippers and made her way through the hallway. Each step felt heavier, not because of the pregnancy, but because of the uncertainty in her heart. When she reached Davis's home office, the door was slightly open. A faint glow from the computer screen illuminated the desk. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to turn around, to crawl back into bed and pretend she didn't feel this shift between them. But another part of her, stronger, braver, tired of excuses, pushed her forward. She stepped inside. The chair was angled away, and Davis's laptop sat open. The messaging app was still active, its window pulled up on the screen. It wasn't locked. He never left it open like this. Her breath caught. For a moment, she considered closing the laptop, walking away, pretending she never stepped into the room. But the ache in her chest whispered otherwise. With trembling fingers, she reached for the mouse. The screen brightened, revealing a thread of messages, active ones. The first line she saw felt like a slap she wasn't prepared for. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." Marbel's entire body went still. A ringing filled her ears. She blinked, hoping she misread it. But the words remained there, sharp and clear. A single tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Her breath trembled as she scrolled. Every message was worse than the last. Soft words, playful teasing, intimate suggestions, none of them meant for her. Her mind raced. Is this real? Is this really happening? Has he been lying to me this whole time? While I'm carrying his child? She scrolled further, bracing herself for whatever came next. But nothing prepared her for the next line. I hate going back to her. Her knees weakened. Another message followed, one that made her stomach twist. Same place tomorrow for lunch? This wasn't an accident. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was planned, repeated, consistent. This was betrayal, careful, intentional betrayal. Her throat tightened as she lowered herself to the floor, the weight of everything pressing down on her. She didn't scream. She didn't call out his name. She just cried, quietly, painfully. She placed a hand on her belly again. "I'm so sorry," she whispered through tears. I didn't know he was doing this to us." The house stayed silent, offering no comfort. A discovery like this hits without warning. One message can change everything. Have you ever felt something was wrong before you saw the proof? That uneasy feeling you tried to ignore until the truth stood right in front of you? Loving someone who chooses deceit, it's a pain that cuts deeper than words. Especially when you've given them your trust, your heart, and in Marbel's case, your future child. What would you do if you found messages like these? Would you confront them immediately, or would you hold your silence until you were ready? Before we go deeper, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your engagement helps us reach more people who need these stories. Marbel stayed on the office floor longer than she realized. The glow of the laptop screen flickered across her face, highlighting every tear that slipped down her cheeks. Her breathing was uneven, each inhale shaky, each exhale heavy with disbelief. She wiped her face, but more tears followed. The hurt wasn't just emotional. It felt physical, sitting like a stone in her chest. She tried to steady her breathing as her baby kicked again, this time harder, responding to the stress swirling inside her body. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry," she whispered, cradling her stomach. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't shouted, hadn't broken anything, but inside, something had cracked wide open. She forced herself to look back at the screen, because as painful as it was, she needed to understand the full scope of what she was dealing with. She scrolled a bit more, slower this time, almost afraid of what she'd find. More messages appeared, more confirmations that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a momentary lapse. These weren't the words of a man confused or caught up in stress. These were the words of someone committed to someone else, even if secretly. Every affectionate line felt like another blow. Every emoji, every planned meetup, every promise hidden in those messages made her chest tighten. Marbel leaned back against the wall, pressing her palms against her eyes. She didn't know whether she wanted to scream or disappear for a moment just to catch her breath, but she did neither. She sat there, breathing through the pain, letting the truth sink in fully. She whispered softly, "Why, Davis? Why would you do this to us?" Her voice cracked on the final word, us, because that was the real wound. He hadn't just betrayed her. He had betrayed their child, their marriage, their future. She closed the laptop gently, as if the softness of her touch could protect her from the harshness of what she had just seen. It didn't, but the gesture felt like her last attempt at holding on to some piece of stability. After a moment, she pulled herself up from the floor, using the edge of the desk for support. Her legs trembled slightly, not just from the emotional shock, but from carrying so much weight, physically and emotionally. She took a long breath, let it out slowly, and wiped her face again. The hurt was still there, raw and overwhelming, but beneath it, something else began to grow. Clarity. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. Her intuition had been right all along. And now, she had to decide what came next. The truth was out, and once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Some truths land so hard they knock the breath right out of you. That's exactly where Marbel is, standing inside a moment she never wished to face. Many people know this feeling, when your heart senses something long before your eyes confirm it. That moment your world shifts, even if the room around you looks exactly the same. What hurts the most isn't the message. It's the realization that someone you trusted with your whole life chose deception and expected you not to notice. So let me ask you again. If you were in her shoes right now, with evidence staring you in the face, what would you do first? Take a breath. Before we continue, take a second to hit the like button. It truly helps push this story to more people who might need strength today. Welcome back to Mr. Brian Inspires. I'm Mr. Brian, and I'm really glad you're here. You know, life has a way of throwing challenges at us when we least expect it. Sometimes we feel stuck. Sometimes we just need a reminder that we're capable of so much more than we think. So if you're ready to be inspired, if you're ready to discover something powerful, then stay with me. And hey, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button because we're building a community of people who believe that every story has the power to change lives. All right, let's get to it. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel louder. Marbel stood in the hallway, one hand on her belly, the other bracing against the wall as she tried to pull herself together. Her mind kept returning to the same question, circling it like a wound she couldn't stop touching. How long has this been going on? She knew the messages were recent, but something inside her whispered that the distance she'd felt these past months, it hadn't been her imagination, it had been the truth trying to show itself. Another soft kick pressed against her ribs, almost like the baby was reminding her, "You have to be strong now." She inhaled deeply, steadied herself, and made her way toward the living room. The framed photos on the wall caught her eye. Vacations, family gatherings, anniversary smiles. She paused at one in particular, the one from the park on their second year of marriage. Davis was looking at her like she was the only person in existence. She remembered how safe she felt that day. Now she wondered when that feeling had started slipping away. She reached for the frame, hesitated, then lowered her hand. She didn't need to break anything. She didn't need to shout. Her strength wasn't in destruction, it was in clarity, and clarity was finally here. The front door clicked. A familiar sound, a sound that once made her smile. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Davis was home. His footsteps echoed toward the living room, steady and unhurried, completely unaware that the truth was already sitting in the house with her. For a split second, Marbel felt a wave of fear, not of him, but of the moment itself, of the confrontation, of the words she could no longer avoid. The reality hit her. She knew the truth, but he didn't know she knew. That fragile balance held for only a breath before Davis stepped into view. He froze when he saw her face. "Marbel, you okay?" he asked casually, setting his keys on the counter. In that instant, she wondered how a man could look so normal, so calm, while she felt like her entire world was trembling under her feet. She opened her mouth, but no words came out yet, not because she was unsure, but because she was no longer emotionally speaking from confusion. She was standing in certainty now, and certainty changes everything. There's a moment in every painful journey when the truth leaves you with a choice. Do you confront it? Do you ignore it? Or do you gather your strength and face whatever comes next? Most people have stood in a moment like this, even if the details were different, when your heart knows something your mouth hasn't said yet. So let me ask you, truly, if you were standing where Marbel is right now, with the evidence fresh in your mind, with your child depending on your next decision, what would you say first? Think about it. The moment Davis stepped into the living room, the atmosphere shifted. Not because of what he did. He didn't slam anything, didn't yell, didn't even look suspicious. It shifted because Marbel was no longer the same woman he left that morning. She stood there, arms loosely folded, her breathing steady but too controlled. A person who hadn't spent the last hour fighting to keep herself from falling apart might have looked normal. But Davis wasn't looking closely enough to notice anything. He loosened his tie and walked toward her with a tired sigh. "Long day. You doing okay?" he asked casually, leaning down to kiss her cheek. She tilted her face just enough to avoid the kiss without making it obvious. A tiny movement, but everything about it revealed what she felt inside. He didn't notice, or he pretended not to. Marbel kept her voice low, quiet, almost detached. "Yeah, I'm fine." A lie she delivered with a calmness she didn't recognize in herself. Her heart was pounding, not out of fear of him, but from the avalanche of emotions swirling inside her chest. The betrayal was too heavy, too fresh, too raw to speak about. She didn't trust her voice not to crack open and spill everything. Davis tossed his keys on the counter and checked his phone like it was an extension of his hand. The sight made her stomach clench. For a second, she thought he might find out she saw the messages. He didn't react at all. He was too comfortable, too confident that his double life was still hidden. "Did you eat?" he asked while scrolling. She nodded. A little. She hadn't eaten. She couldn't. Her stomach had been twisted ever since the messages flashed across the screen. The shock was so intense she had felt physically sick, her throat tightening until she could barely breathe. Even now, with Davis standing just a few feet away, the memory made her chest tighten again. She placed a protective hand on her belly, not dramatic, not exaggerated, just instinctual. Her unborn baby shifted lightly, responding to her stress. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment. "Please don't absorb this. Mama is trying. I'm trying to stay calm for you." She took a breath. A long, controlled one. The kind meant to keep a person from breaking down. Davis didn't look up. He typed something quickly, another text she didn't want to imagine, and then placed his phone face down on the counter. He still didn't notice the pain sitting right in front of him. "Traffic was crazy," he continued, walking toward the kitchen. Her voice caught a little before she forced it to come out. She didn't commit to a real response. She didn't want to. Every word from her felt measured, deliberate, a shield. And the shield was important because one wrong word could shatter the thin control she still had over her emotions. Inside her mind, the messages replayed like a cruel slideshow. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. I hate going back to her. Same place tomorrow? Lunch." Every line was burned into her memory, each one twisted deeper into her chest. But she forced herself to stay composed on the outside. This wasn't the moment to confront him. Not yet. Not while the shock was still so sharp it made her knees weak. She remembered her mother's words years ago. "A storm is best handled when your mind is clear, baby. Not when you're shaking in the middle of it." Her mind was anything but clear right now, but she knew she had to get there. She followed Davis into the kitchen slowly. He reached into the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and twisted it open. "You feeling tired?" he asked casually. "You look quiet today." She almost let out a bitter laugh. "Quiet?" Quiet didn't even begin to cover it. "I'm okay," she said simply. Her tone was steady, but inside, she felt like she was balancing on the edge of a cliff. One word, one wrong move, and everything would tumble into the open. Davis leaned against the counter and finally looked at her fully. "You sure you're all right, babe?" Babe. The word felt foreign now, almost offensive. That was the word he used for her. The same word he probably avoided using for that woman so he wouldn't slip up. Marbel kept her voice neutral. "Just tired." That was the second lie of the night, and it slid out effortlessly. Her hands shook slightly at her sides, so she clasped them together to stop the trembling. Yes, tired, she repeated silently inside her mind. Tired of carrying the weight alone. Tired of pretending everything was okay. Tired of believing a man who had been lying so easily. Her thoughts were running in circles. She needed to steady herself. Then she remembered his phone had buzzed earlier. He had texted her earlier in the day before coming home, late again. Don't wait up. That moment felt symbolic now. A small sign of the loneliness she'd been swallowing piece by piece. Tonight, that loneliness felt almost suffocating. Davis stretched and walked toward the hallway. I'm gonna take a shower. You need anything? No. Okay. He paused. You sure you're good? She nodded once, firmly. He disappeared down the hall. The moment he was gone, her knees nearly buckled. She rested both hands on the counter, leaning forward, feeling her chest tighten again. She inhaled slowly, trying to fight back the wave of nausea that threatened to rise. Disbelief had given way to pain. Pain was turning into something else now, a simmering determination. How did we get here? She whispered into the empty kitchen. Her voice trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of the truth she could no longer unknow. She walked back to the living room and sank onto the couch. The house was silent except for the faint sound of running water in the distance. Silence used to comfort her. Now, it mocked her. It made the room feel bigger, emptier, colder. She looked at the family photos again, looked at the life they had built, the memories they had gathered, the promises they once made each other. She pressed her hand over her belly again. I deserve to know the truth, she whispered. Not for revenge, not to punish him, but because the truth would dictate every decision she made from now on, including how she protected her child. She felt another small kick, as if her baby agreed. Her heart thudded hard against her chest. She wiped her cheeks again, not even realizing the tears had returned. She stood up and walked slowly down the hallway, past the door of the bathroom where the shower still ran. This time, she didn't stop by the closed door. She kept walking toward their bedroom. She needed space. She needed time. She needed clarity. And she needed a plan. Because this betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was under her roof. And that changed everything. If you've ever had to make a hard decision for your own peace, tell me I deserve better in the comments. The next morning, sunlight crept into the bedroom earlier than Marbel wanted it to. She had barely slept. Her mind had stayed restless long after Davis crawled into bed beside her the night before. He had fallen asleep quickly, breathing deeply, completely unaware of the emotional hurricane spinning just inches away. Marbel, meanwhile, lay on her side with her back turned to him, her hand resting on her belly, whispering silent prayers for strength. Now, as the light spread across their room, she blinked against it, feeling the heaviness of everything wash over her again. It wasn't just fatigue. It was emotional exhaustion, the kind that sits behind your ribs and makes your body feel heavier than usual. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Jasmine. Morning, girl. You okay? I've been thinking about you all night. The sight of her best friend's name brought an ache to her chest. A good ache. A reminder she wasn't alone. Marbel typed back slowly. Can we meet today? Jasmine replied almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting. Of course. Tell me where. I'm already dressed. Don't play. Marbel let out a breathy laugh, the first hint of light in her since last night. Jasmine always had a way of softening even the hardest moments. Davis stirred beside her, stretching. Morning, he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Morning, she replied quietly. Her voice wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. It was restrained, careful. He didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't question it. You want breakfast? He asked. No, I'm heading out soon. Oh, doctor appointment? No, just meeting Jasmine. He nodded casually, unaware of the storm behind those words. Okay, be careful, driving. She didn't respond. She walked into the bathroom instead. The cafe Jasmine chose sat at the corner of a busy intersection, one of their old meeting spots. A little place with mismatched chairs, handwritten chalkboard menus, and the smell of fresh coffee drifting into the street. When Marbel walked in, Jasmine was already standing, eyes scanning her face. One look, just one, and her expression shifted sharply from concern to silent rage. Oh no, Jasmine breathed, walking toward her with open arms. Girl, come here. She pulled Marbel into a tight hug, steady and grounding. You didn't sleep, Jasmine whispered. No, Marbel admitted. Did he say anything? Did you say anything? Marbel shook her head as they sat down. Jasmine folded her arms, leaning forward with fire in her eyes. Okay, tell me everything. Slowly, Marbel took a deep breath. She felt the weight of last night pressing against her ribs again. I saw messages, she began softly. Not accidental ones, not friendly ones, real messages. Jasmine's jaw tightened. What kind of messages? Marbel pulled out her phone and opened the photos she had taken. She placed it on the table, turning the screen toward her friend. Jasmine leaned in. The reaction was instant. A sharp inhale, then a long exhale that shook with fury. Oh no, he did not. She slapped her hand over her mouth like she had to physically stop herself from shouting inside the cafe. Her voice dropped low and intense. Marbel, what is this? Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. She looked up, voice trembling with anger. Who does he think he is? This man is out of his out of his mind. Marbel didn't laugh, but her lips twitched slightly. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. You did the right thing by calling me, Jasmine replied firmly. Now, did you confront him? No, I couldn't. I wasn't ready. Jasmine nodded slowly, supportive, not judgmental. Good. You shouldn't confront him while shaken like that. He'd twist the conversation, make excuses, say nonsense like it meant nothing, or she misunderstood, and you'd walk away even more hurt. Marbel sighed, feeling seen in a painful way. That's what I was afraid of. I wanted clarity first. You're thinking clearly, Jasmine said. That's strength, not weakness. They paused when the server approached. Can I get you ladies anything? Marbel shook her head. I'm okay, thank you. Jasmine ordered for both of them. She'll take ginger tea, extra honey. I'll take iced chai. Marbel gave her a tired smile. Always ordering for me. Someone's got to take care of you, Jasmine replied. Especially now. When the server left, Jasmine leaned in again. Let's get into this. You said you weren't ready to confront him. I respect that. But we need a plan. Marbel nodded. I know. I just didn't expect it. I genuinely thought I was overthinking things. Jasmine scoffed. You overthink? Girl, you are the most patient woman I know. If you're worried, there's a reason. Intuition is real. Women feel things before they see them. A tear rolled down Marbel's cheek. Jasmine reached out and wiped it with her thumb. You're pregnant, you're emotional, and you're carrying a whole human being inside you. The last thing you need is a man playing games behind your back. Marbel nodded again, this time harder. I felt stupid, she admitted. Like, how did I not see it sooner? Jasmine shook her head quickly. Stop, don't even go there. This is not your fault. He is responsible for his choices, not you. But I keep asking myself, Marbel whispered. How did we get here? That's the right question. But you're asking it from pain, not from clarity. Let's separate the two. She pulled out a napkin and began writing like she was mapping out a battle plan. Tell me all the signs you ignored. Marbel hesitated. Jasmine gently tapped the pen against the notebook. Take your time. So she did. She talked about the late nights, the sudden distance, the phone face down, the guilt that flickered in his eyes, the excuses. Jasmine wrote every point down. Then she leaned back, exhaling slowly. Okay, let's break this down. Step by step. Marbel blinked at her. Break it down? Yes, Jasmine said. Because once you see the pattern, you'll understand this wasn't sudden. It was gradual, and gradual means intentional. She numbered each point and explained them, one by one. First, Jasmine said, he started coming home late. Not once, repeatedly. That's a shift. Second, he lied about who he was texting. Lied easily, too. Third, he changed his behavior, his energy, his availability. She paused, lowering her voice. And fourth, he planned lunch dates with her. That's not an accident. That's routine. Each point landed like a small blow to Marbel's chest. Not because they were new discoveries, she already knew them, but because hearing them out loud stripped away her last layer of denial. Girl, Jasmine whispered, squeezing her hand gently. You've been carrying this pain quietly for too long. A tear fell onto the napkin. I was afraid to see the truth, Marbel said softly. I know, Jasmine answered. But look at you. You saw it anyway. You faced it. For a moment, they sat quietly. Jasmine's expression softened. "And let me tell you something else." "What?" "You're not broken." The words landed so gently, yet so powerfully, Marbel had to inhale slowly to keep herself from crying again. "You're hurt, yes, but you're still standing, and that alone makes you stronger than you think." Marbel closed her eyes, let the words sink in, allowed herself to believe them. Even just for a moment, the server arrived with their drinks. Jasmine pushed the tea toward her. "Drink. It'll settle your stomach." As Marbel sipped, Jasmine continued in her usual Jasmine style, equal parts tough love and humor. "I swear," she muttered, "if my man ever did this, oh, he better pack a tent because he's sleeping outside, permanently. And not like, oh, it's a warm summer night type of outside. I mean, in the cold, with raccoons." Despite everything, Marbel laughed softly. "Raccoons?" "Yes," Jasmine insisted. "Raccoons. They'll look at him like, 'Welcome to the neighborhood.'" That made Marbel laugh harder than she expected, a sudden, unexpected burst of relief. Jasmine grinned. "That's right. Laugh. It's allowed. Trauma doesn't get to steal your sense of humor, especially not today." When the laughter faded, Jasmine leaned in again. "Okay," she said seriously. "Next step, evidence." Marbel frowned. "I already saw enough." "Enough for your heart," Jasmine corrected. "Not enough if he tries to spin this. Men like this, they're experts at twisting stories. You need undeniable proof." A quiet strength settled into Marbel's shoulders. "I can get more," she said. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. "And when you get it," Jasmine replied, "you'll know exactly what to do." Marbel took another sip of tea, feeling the warmth settle her stomach and her spirit. "Thank you," she whispered. Jasmine reached across the table and squeezed her hand again. "Always," she said. "You hear me? I don't care what happens. I'm here. You're not walking through this alone." And for the first time since last night, Marbel believed it. Their conversation slowed, settling into a heavy quiet, the kind of quiet that holds truth, not silence. Marbel stared into her tea, watching tiny ripples form along the surface. She felt calmer now, steadier. But beneath her ribs, a new sensation was forming, not panic, not sadness. Something sharper, a seed of resolve. Jasmine watched her closely, studying her expression the way only a best friend can. "You're thinking," Jasmine said slowly. "I am," Marbel replied, her voice quiet but grounded. "What's on your mind?" Marbel lifted her gaze. Something in her eyes had shifted, a clarity that hadn't been there earlier. "I need answers," she said. "Real ones, not excuses, not half-truths. I want the full picture of what he's been doing when he says he's working late. I want to see what he thinks I'm too blind to notice." Jasmine nodded as if she had been waiting for this moment. "There it is," she whispered. "That's the strength I knew was in you." Marbel didn't smile. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She was simply awakening. She placed her hand gently over her belly and exhaled shakily. "I'm not doing this just for me," she said. "I'm doing it because my child deserves a mother who isn't afraid of the truth." Jasmine leaned forward, her voice low and serious. "So what are you going to do first?" Before Marbel could answer, her phone buzzed on the table, a sharp vibration that cut through the calm like a blade. Both women froze. Marbel's eyes dropped to the screen. A new message from Davis. "Hey babe, I have a lighter day at the office tomorrow. Maybe we can spend time later?" Jasmine's eyes widened. "Oh, wow," she whispered. "He doesn't even know the storm he's standing under." Marbel stared at the message, her pulse tightening. "Tomorrow," she repeated softly. The word echoed in her mind. Tomorrow he would be in that office. Tomorrow he would be comfortable. Tomorrow he would think everything was normal. Jasmine leaned in closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Marbel, what does that mean for you?" Marbel locked her phone, her expression shifting again, deeper, steadier, a calm that almost scared even her. "It means," she said gently, "that tomorrow might be the day everything changes." A chill ran through Jasmine. Not fear. Anticipation. Marbel lifted her tea, finished the last sip, and set the cup down with quiet finality. She wasn't shaking anymore. She wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was preparing. For truth. For answers. For whatever came next. The wind outside brushed against the cafe windows, and for a moment the entire room felt still, like the world itself sensed a storm gathering beneath Marbel's calm exterior. Jasmine whispered, "Girl, tomorrow is going to be something." Marbel inhaled deeply. It is fade out on her expression, not broken, but ready, more ready than she had ever been. If you've ever had to gather your strength before facing the truth, tell me I'm stronger than I look in the comments. The sky had shifted from morning brightness to a dull gray by the time Marbel left the cafe. Clouds were gathering overhead, not heavy enough for rain yet, but enough to make the air feel weighted, quiet, reflective, and somber. It matched her mood perfectly. Jasmine walked her to the car, refusing to leave her side until she knew her friend was steady enough to drive. "You okay to go?" Jasmine asked softly, squeezing her arm. "I think so," Marbel replied. "You sure?" "Yes. I just need a little time alone." Jasmine nodded. She knew when to push and when to step back. "If you need me, call. I don't care if it's in the middle of the night, you hear me?" "I know," Marbel said, her voice warm but tired. "Thank you." Jasmine leaned in, hugged her again, a long, grounding embrace, then stepped back as Marbel got into the car. As the door closed, the silence wrapped around Marbel again. But this silence was different from last night's hollow stillness. This silence carried direction, purpose, something steady beneath the hurt. She placed her hands on the steering wheel and inhaled deeply through her nose, holding the breath until her chest stretched, then releasing it slowly. One decision stood clear in her mind now. She needed legal clarity before emotional clarity. If she confronted Davis without knowing her rights or her options, she risked being swayed by his words, his tears, his familiar tenderness, all things he had weaponized while living a double life. No, this time she had to understand her power before she faced him. She picked up her phone and scrolled to the number she had found the night before but hadn't yet called. Adele Sampson, family attorney with a reputation for integrity and honesty. Marbel dialed. It rang once, twice. Then a calm professional voice answered. "Office of Adele Sampson." "Hi," Marbel said, steadying her tone. "My name is Marbel. I'd like to know if Ms. Sampson is available for a consultation today. It's important." The assistant hesitated, but only for a moment. "We had a cancellation at 1 p.m. Would that work?" Marbel glanced at the time. 11:48 a.m. Yes, that works. Thank you. We'll see you then." She ended the call and stared at the phone for a long moment. This was happening. She was really taking the first step. Her heart thudded, not with fear, but with resolve. She turned the key and drove. The law office sat in a quiet building downtown, modern but modest, not flashy, not intimidating, just clean, orderly, and balanced. The kind of place that felt safe. Marbel parked and stepped out of the car slowly. Her belly felt heavier today, as if her child sensed the emotional toll she was carrying. She brushed a hand along her side in a soothing motion. "Mama's here," she whispered softly. "I'm doing this for us." Inside, the waiting room was calm, decorated with warm tones and inspirational quotes framed on the wall. A receptionist looked up and smiled in recognition. "You must be Marbel. Miss Sampson will see you shortly. Please make yourself comfortable." Marbel nodded and sat down. She felt the soft cushion absorb some of the tension in her shoulders. For a moment, she allowed her eyes to close. Not to sleep, just to breathe. A few minutes later, the receptionist called her name. "Miss Sampson will see you now." Marbel stood slowly, smoothing her blouse over her belly, and followed the hallway into a private office. Adele was at her desk, reviewing paperwork. She looked up as soon as Marbel entered. A woman in her late 40s, dressed in simple yet elegant attire. Her expression was professional, but her eyes, warm. "Marbel," she greeted, rising to shake her hand. "I'm glad you came. Please sit." Marbel sat across from her, the leather chair soft but firm beneath her. "I read the message you left with my assistant," Adele said gently. "You mentioned this is personal and urgent." Marbel swallowed, nodding. "Yes, I'm not sure where to start." "Start wherever feels right," Adele said calmly. "This is your space. There's no judgment here." That simple reassurance cracked something inside Marbel. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes, and she blinked quickly to steady herself. "I think my husband is cheating," she whispered. "No, I don't think. I know." Adele didn't react with shock. She simply listened, truly listened. Tell me what happened. So Marbel did. She told her about the messages she saw, the late nights, the sudden shift in behavior, the betrayal that shook her to her core, the pregnancy that made her feel both fiercely protective and painfully vulnerable. Adele sat quietly through it all, hands folded, expression thoughtful and compassionate. When Marbel finished, she exhaled shakily. I feel lost, she admitted. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. I don't want to act out of anger, but I also don't want to be blind anymore. Adele nodded slowly. I understand, she said softly, and I'm going to help you understand your options, legally, emotionally, and practically. She opened a folder and pulled out a pen. Let's begin. First, Adele said, you need to know this. You are not trapped. You are not powerless. And you are not alone. Something about hearing that from a professional, a woman who had clearly helped many others through painful decisions, lifted a weight from Marbel's chest. Adele continued, infidelity, especially during pregnancy, is devastating, but from a legal perspective you have choices. You are not being forced into any single path. Marbel nodded slowly. Adele went on, her tone calm and informative. You can choose counseling, you can choose separation, you can choose divorce, or you can choose to wait before making any decision. Nothing must be rushed. Marbel's shoulders relaxed just a little. What most women underestimate, Adele said, is how much clarity comes from knowledge. When you know your rights, your emotions stop controlling you. You gain control. That line struck something deep within Marbel. Then Adele pulled out a set of documents. These, she explained, are preliminary divorce papers. They are not filed. They are simply prepared for you so that, if you choose to move forward, it can be done swiftly and strategically. Marbel stared at them, not terrified, not overwhelmed, just contemplative. I don't know if I'm ready for divorce, she whispered. You don't have to be, Adele said gently. These papers are not a declaration of war. They are a safety net, a protection, a reminder that you have choices. Marbel blinked back tears. Adele leaned forward, lowering her voice. Let me give you one piece of advice, she said. If you choose to serve him, the timing matters, the place matters, and your emotional state matters. It is always better when the person serving has the advantage, the strength, the upper hand. She paused. Serving him publicly, for example, prevents private intimidation or manipulation. That is why many clients choose a location where witnesses are present. Marbel felt her heart thump. It wasn't revenge she wanted. It was truth, dignity, and safety from being gaslit. Adele closed the folder gently. Whatever you decide, I will support you. After the meeting, Marbel walked slowly to her car. The documents were in her purse, not heavy, but they felt like a symbol of the decision she had not yet made, but could no longer avoid acknowledging. She unlocked her car, sat inside, and closed the door. Then, for the first time since last night, she cried. Not small, silent tears, not a quiet trembling. She sobbed, deeply, painfully, uncontrollably, gripping the steering wheel as if it were the only thing holding her upright. Her tears weren't just for Davis. They were for the future she thought she had, for the promises she believed, for the fear of raising a child in a fractured home, for the loneliness she had been carrying silently for too long. She cried until her breath came in short, uneven pulls. Then her phone buzzed. She wiped her eyes, cleared her throat, and looked. A message from Davis. Tomorrow should be an easy day. Maybe we can do dinner? Tomorrow again. That word kept following her like a shadow. Tomorrow. He would be comfortable. Tomorrow. He would lie effortlessly again. Tomorrow. He would not suspect a thing. And suddenly, the tears stopped. Her breath steadied. Her heart slowed. A calm washed over her, not peace, but clarity. She whispered into the quiet car. Tomorrow will not go the way you think, Davis. Her baby kicked once, as if responding. Marbel rested her hand over her belly and closed her eyes. She wasn't just hurt anymore. She was preparing, ready. Because tomorrow was no longer his comfort. It was her turning point. If you believe in trusting your instincts, comment, my intuition matters. Love rarely announces itself. Most times it comes quietly, slipping into a moment so ordinary, you almost miss how extraordinary it is. That was how it happened for Marbel and Davis. At a community clean-to-up day neither of them planned to attend. The neighborhood association had organized it one Saturday morning, Flyers were taped to lampposts and slipped under doors across the community. Marbel hadn't intended to go. She had a freelance deadline and a dozen errands waiting, but something tugged her heart toward showing up. "I'll only stay an hour," she told herself as she tied her hair up and grabbed a pair of gloves. 1 hour turned into the beginning of a love story. The park was already buzzing with volunteers when she arrived. Kids with trash grabbers, parents wiping sweat from their foreheads, elderly neighbors chatting under the shade, and music from a small speaker playing soft R&B classics. A warm Atlanta breeze drifted through the trees. Marbel approached the sign-in table and wrote her name. "Hi, I'm Malik," the coordinator said with a smile. "Thank you for coming out." She smiled politely. "Happy to help." Malik pointed toward a small hill. "You'll be working up there today. Team 3. They're clearing the walking trail." She walked toward the hill, gloves in hand, trying to spot her team, and that's when she saw him. A tall man with sandy blonde hair, rolled up sleeves, and a pair of safety goggles pushed up onto his forehead. He was attempting, and failing, to assemble a trash picker. "Come on, man," he muttered to the tool. "Work with me here." Something about the frustration mixed with determination made her chuckle. He glanced up, heard it, and locked eyes with her. He froze. She froze. One of those rare moments when the world quiets without warning. He smiled first. A small, sheepish smile that softened his whole face. This isn't what it looks like," he said. "Oh," she teased, "because it looks like you're losing a fight with a stick." He blinked, then laughed. A real laugh. Warm, genuine, and slightly embarrassed. "You're not wrong," he admitted. "I swear I'm usually better at everyday tools." "Is that so?" she said, folding her arms. "Absolutely. I can even prove it. Just not today." She couldn't help but smile. He extended his hand. "I'm Davis." She shook it. "Marbel." A moment passed. A soft, subtle connection neither of them could fully explain. "Well, Marbel," he said, "before you judge me too hard, may I interest you in helping a grown man regain his dignity?" "Only if you promise not to break anything else," she replied. "I make no promises," he said solemnly. Their laughter blended with the hum of volunteers around them. Instant chemistry, unmistakable. The next hour felt strangely easy. They cleared branches, picked up scattered trash, and helped guide seniors walking the trail. Davis cracked jokes that made her shake her head but secretly enjoy every one of them. "So what brings you here today?" he asked, lifting a bag of trash into a nearby bin. "Community service," she said simply. "I like doing things that make the neighborhood better." "That's impressive." "It's normal," she replied. "Normal?" he repeated. "Not to everyone. Some people run from anything that looks like responsibility. And what about you?" "Oh, I run too," he said seriously. She raised an eyebrow. "Just not from this," he finished. It was a simple exchange, but something about it felt honest, unpolished, unperformed. He didn't try to impress her with big words or rehearsed lines. He was just Davis. At one point he tripped on a tree root while trying to move a heavy bag. The bag almost toppled over. He regained balance at the last second. Marbel burst into laughter. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," he replied, brushing dirt off his shorts. "My pride, however, is bruised." "Your pride has been through a lot today." "Yes," he said gravely. "And yet I endure." Her laughter made him smile so widely she had to look away for a moment. She wasn't used to meeting people who felt this easy, this light. After another hour, Malik called out, "Team 3, break time." Davis looked at her. "You want water?" "I'd love one." He jogged to the cooler, grabbed 2 bottles and handed one to her. "Hydration," he said with mock seriousness. "Step 1 of surviving my company. Is there a step 2? "Yes," he said. "Putting up with my jokes." "Ah," she replied. "That's the difficult part." His laugh came again, warm and effortless. She didn't realize she was staring at him until he met her eyes again, and neither looked away. Before they parted ways that afternoon, Davis asked, "Do you think maybe we could hang out sometime?" She hesitated for a short moment, not because she wasn't interested, but because she wanted to be careful. "Maybe," she said lightly. "Let's see." He nodded, but she saw the spark in his eyes. 3 days later, she texted, "My church does a midweek family night on Wednesdays. You can come if you'd like." He replied instantly, I'd love to. What time? When Wednesday came, Davis walked into her church hall wearing a crisp shirt, clean jeans, and a nervous expression he was trying very hard to hide. The smell of baked macaroni, fried chicken, and peach cobbler wafted through the air. Kids ran around in the back, aunties carried foil pans, and the choir rehearsed softly in another room. Davis looked both amazed and overwhelmed. I didn't know churches did this, he whispered. In my community, they do, she said proudly. You grew up here? Born and raised. He nodded, taking it all in, the warmth, the noise, the welcome. One elder waved at Marbel. Baby, bring your friend over here. My friend? Davis whispered. Just follow me, she said. When the elder looked Davis up and down, she smiled slowly. Well, you brought us a tall one. Davis almost tripped again. Thank you. I think. Marbel couldn't hold back her laughter. Throughout the night, Davis danced awkwardly with kids, tried food he couldn't pronounce, clapped way off beat during a choir practice moment, and genuinely enjoyed every second. At one point, he leaned toward her and whispered, This feels like home. She looked at him, surprised. It does. It does, he said softly. Something warmed inside her. Something gentle. A week later, he invited her to his family's lake house for a small BBQ. My parents are a little quiet, he warned, not unfriendly, just quiet. Quiet is fine, she said. When they arrived, the lake shimmered under the afternoon sun. His family was gathered on the deck, grilling burgers, laughing softly, and chatting in small groups. His mother approached Marbel first. You must be Marbel, she said kindly. We've heard wonderful things. Only good things, I hope. Oh, yes, she replied warmly. Welcome. The atmosphere was relaxed, the kind where people sat on porch swings, sipped lemonade, and talked about simple, pleasant things. Davis showed her the dock. My dad taught me to fish here, he said. And, do you still fish? No, he whispered seriously. I'm terrible at it. She burst into laughter again. He smiled. You know, I really like your laugh. It's warm. Her cheeks warmed at the compliment. His father brought out his old guitar and played soft melodies. Kids tossed pebbles into the lake. Couples walked barefoot along the shoreline. And through it all, Davis kept glancing at her, not nervously, not intensely, but with the quiet admiration of someone discovering something beautiful. Their love didn't arrive suddenly. It came gently, in text messages that lasted until midnight, in phone calls that stretched for hours, in long drives with the windows down, music low, hands brushing softly, in the way he held her hand during church sermons, in the way she saved him leftovers from Sunday dinners, in the way he introduced her to hiking trails, and she introduced him to soul food, in the way they learned each other's jokes and silences, in the quiet trust that grew without force. One night, as they walked downtown sharing ice cream, Davis stopped suddenly. What? She asked. He looked at her softly, almost shyly. I think, he said slowly, you're the best part of my life. Her heart trembled, but she hid it behind a smile. We're just getting started. He nodded, eyes warm and sincere, and she knew she wasn't wrong. Love has many stages, but one of its sweetest phases is when two people finally realize, this is my person. For Marbel and Davis, this realization didn't arrive through dramatic declarations or sweeping gestures. It arrived through consistency, through showing up for each other, through daily kindness. It was all so natural that the thought of marriage didn't feel like a question. It felt like the next step in a story already unfolding. It happened on a warm Sunday afternoon. They had spent the day walking around a local farmer's market, sampling fruit, listening to street musicians, looking at handmade jewelry, and laughing at the way Davis reacted to spicy food. You said a little kick. He coughed dramatically after trying hot sauce. I did. You just didn't listen. I listened, he managed between coughs. My tongue didn't. She shook her head, smiling. Later, they walked to a quiet corner of the park, under the shade of a tall oak tree. Families picnicked nearby, children ran with bubbles, and the smell of grilled corn drifted through the air. They sat on a blanket Davis had brought. At one point, he grew quiet, unusually quiet. You good? She asked. He nodded, looking at her hands resting on her lap. You know, he said softly, I used to think love was complicated, chaotic, messy, isn't it? She teased. Maybe, but not with you. With you, it feels peaceful, like I can breathe." Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. He reached into his pocket. Her breath caught. He didn't kneel dramatically. He didn't make a grand speech. He simply held a small velvet box between their hands. "Marbel," he whispered, "will you marry me?" Tears formed instantly. She covered her mouth with one hand, nodding before the words could form. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I will." Davis exhaled a shaky laugh, relief flooding his face. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a delicate band with a single stone that sparkled in the sunlight. "Perfect," he murmured. "Just like you." They held each other for a long moment, letting the world move around them. People walked past, unaware that a life-changing promise had just been made under that quiet oak tree. It was simple. It was intimate. It was perfect. They chose an outdoor ceremony in early autumn, a season that felt gentle and hopeful. The air was cool enough for comfort, but warm enough for joy to move freely. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle beneath tall trees. Soft music played from a small speaker. String lights hung overhead, glowing warmly as the sun dipped. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't showy. It was exactly what they wanted. A celebration of two people choosing each other. Her dress was simple, long, flowing, and elegant without loud details. His suit fit him perfectly, light gray with a crisp white shirt. As Marbel walked down the aisle, Davis's eyes filled instantly. He tried to blink the tears away, but they spilled anyway. "Wow," he whispered when she reached him. "You look beautiful," he said louder, hands trembling as he took hers. "You too," she replied, voice shaky from emotion. Pastor John, who had known Marbel since she was a child, began the ceremony with warmth that felt like an embrace. "Love does not demand perfection," he said. "It demands effort, patience, and understanding." These two have shown all three. As they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye among their closest family and friends. Davis's voice cracked midway through. "I promise to show up. Not just in the big moments, but in the small ones too. Because love is built in the ordinary, and you've made my ordinary days extraordinary." Marbel's vow was soft but steady. "I promise to walk with you, to support you, to laugh with you, to pray with you, and to build a home where kindness lives." When they sealed it with a kiss, cheers erupted. Some people clapped. Some wiped tears. Some shouted, "About time." Their first dance happened under the string lights, with jasmine-scented candles along the edges of the wooden deck. They swayed slowly to an old R&B love song. Davis whispered in her ear, "I still can't believe you said yes." "I still can't believe you asked," she whispered back. He held her tighter. A few months after the wedding, they bought their first home together, a soft gray two-story with a wraparound porch and a yard big enough for future memories. It wasn't luxurious. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs. The first night inside, surrounded by boxes and half-assembled furniture, they ordered pizza and sat on the floor with paper plates. "This is surreal," Davis said, looking around the room. "What is?" she asked. "That we get to build a life in here." The heater hummed softly. The living room walls echoed with newness. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "This feels right," she said. He kissed her temple. Over the next few weeks, they turned the empty house into a home. She picked warm tones for the living room. He chose a coffee table he swore was indestructible. She brought in framed quotes and soft blankets. He insisted on a fire pit for the backyard. She added plants. He added tools. Their routines formed effortlessly. Saturday morning pancakes, Sunday grocery runs, weeknight dinners cooked together, late night talks on the porch. They created their first traditions, like lighting a candle during dinner every Friday, leaving handwritten notes for each other in the kitchen, watching old movies on rainy nights. These small things stitched their life with comfort. One night, as they lay on the couch watching TV, Davis whispered, "You make this place feel like more than a house." She looked up at him softly. "You made it feel like a life." Months passed with a rhythm that felt steady and warm. Then, one morning, Marbel sat on the bathroom floor staring at a small plastic stick. Positive. She blinked at it for a long moment, emotions swirling in slow, steady waves. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't overwhelmed. She felt full of hope, full of tenderness, full of something sacred. She placed a hand over her belly and whispered, "Hi, little one." For a week she kept the secret to herself, wanting to create a moment Davis would never forget. On a Saturday evening, she asked him to come home early. "Heavy traffic today," he texted, "but I'll try." When he finally walked in, tired but smiling, he saw a small gift bag on the coffee table. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." He reached inside and pulled out a tiny white onesie with the words, "Daddy's new best friend." He stared at it, blinking, frozen. Then his eyes lifted to hers, wide, glistening, shocked in the best way. "No," he whispered, stunned. "Are you—" She nodded, tears forming. Davis covered his mouth with both hands, dropping onto the couch like his knees gave out. Tears spilled instantly, raw, unfiltered emotion. "Marbel," he whispered, voice breaking. "Are you serious?" "Yes." He hugged her tightly, tighter than ever before, burying his face in her shoulder. "I'm going to be a dad," he choked out. "We're going to be parents," she corrected softly. He pulled back, cupping her face. "I didn't know I could feel this kind of happiness." She kissed him gently. "Now you do." For the rest of the night he couldn't stop touching her belly, making whispered promises to the baby. "I'm going to protect you. I'm going to be the best father I can be. You're already loved." The joy in the house was so rich it felt like the walls themselves absorbed it. They told family the next week. His parents cried softly. Her family shouted with joy. Pastor John prayed over them. The home blossomed with baby magazines, doctor appointment reminders, nursery ideas, arguments about crib colors, and playful debates about baby names. Davis went with her to every appointment. He held her hand during ultrasounds. He recorded the sound of the heartbeat. He bought books about fatherhood. He started assembling baby furniture months in advance. At this point in their journey, anyone looking from the outside would have said, "Those two, they're solid. No cracks, no shadows. No signs of the storm ahead, just love, full and unguarded." And that is what makes what came later so heartbreaking. Because readers now see clearly, this wasn't a shallow relationship. This wasn't a fragile marriage. This was love built from the ground up, which makes the betrayal that much heavier. But for now, in Chapter 2, the memory remains warm and real. Comment, family first, if you believe marriage is built on effort, not perfection. Every marriage has seasons. Some feel like a warm summer day, steady, bright, full of ease. Others feel like early winter, subtle shifts, quiet chills, things changing slowly before you even realize the temperature has dropped. For Marbel and Davis, the season of change crept in quietly. Nothing explosive, nothing obvious, just moments, little things that didn't feel alarming at first, but lingered like shadows beneath warm light. It started with Davis's company expanding faster than expected. New investors, new clients, new deadlines, new pressure. He had always been dedicated, but now his work followed him everywhere. Into dinner conversations, into Saturdays they once reserved for each other, into late nights when he sat hunched over his laptop long after she'd gone to bed. One evening, she found him asleep at his desk, face pressed into a stack of documents, computer screen still glowing. She placed a blanket over his shoulders and kissed the top of his head. "Come to bed when you can," she whispered. He mumbled something unintelligible, too exhausted to wake. The next morning, he apologized for missing dinner the night before. "I'm sorry," he said, rubbing his temples. "This investor deal is going to set us up for years. I just need to push hard for a little while." She believed him. She supported him. She always had, but a little while stretched into weeks. And then months. The house didn't feel the same anymore. Some nights, she cooked dinner for two and ended up eating alone. Other nights, she packed his plate away in the fridge because he texted, running late again. "Don't wait up." At first, she responded, "Okay, be safe." Later, her responses became shorter, "All right." And eventually, she stopped responding entirely. She noticed that the laughter that once filled their home had quieted. Conversations shortened. Affection dwindled. Their once tight schedule of shared activities fell apart. She still woke up early to kiss him goodbye each morning, but she noticed he didn't always lean into it the way he used to. Sometimes he seemed distracted, eyes glossed over with stress. Still, she tried to understand. She reminded herself, this is what marriage looks like sometimes. Seasons, patience. But it didn't make the loneliness less sharp. At first, Davis came home late, maybe once or twice a week. Then it became 4 nights a week. Then 5. He often arrived after she was already in bed. She would wake to the sound of the door opening, hear his quiet footsteps, and smell the faint scent of takeout on his clothes, something she hadn't cooked. Sometimes he slid into bed beside her without a word. Other times he showered immediately, emerging with barely enough energy to say goodnight. One night, she stayed awake intentionally, determined to wait for him. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m., then 2. He finally walked in at 2:37 a.m. She turned on the lamp. He froze in the doorway, surprised to see her awake. "You're still up?" he asked, voice weary. "I wanted to see you," she said quietly. He forced a smile, but his eyes were tired. "Long night." "Sorry," she nodded. "Do you want to talk?" He hesitated just long enough to make the answer hurt. "Not tonight. I'm exhausted." He kissed her forehead, a gesture that used to feel intimate but now felt like a placeholder, and he turned off the light. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing settle into a deep sleep. Her own eyes did not close for hours. The moment that pierced her calm came on an otherwise ordinary evening. They were sitting on the couch watching a show, or rather, she was watching it. Davis had his phone in his hand, thumb tapping rapidly. The screen lit up, and she saw a name flash for a split second, Vanessa, a small heart next to a woman's name. Her stomach tightened, like someone had reached inside and pulled a string too sharply. She didn't react immediately. Years of maturity kept her from jumping to conclusions. But her mind was racing. Before she could speak, he quickly flipped the phone over. "Everything okay?" she asked gently, keeping her tone controlled. He didn't look at her. "Yeah, just work stuff." Work stuff rarely came with heart emojis. But she swallowed her unease. She wanted to trust him. She needed to trust him. Silence stretched between them like a thin thread pulled too tight. The next red flag appeared later that week. Davis left his laptop open on the dining table while he stepped outside to take a call. Normally he didn't hide anything, but today, as soon as he saw her walk toward the table, he stepped back inside abruptly and closed the screen. "I thought you were outside," she said. "I forgot something," he replied, a little too quickly. She didn't press, but she felt something shift inside, a quiet, unwelcome whisper telling her something is wrong. Determined not to jump to conclusions, she suggested they have a date night, something they hadn't done in a while. To her surprise, Davis agreed. They went to a small restaurant they used to visit regularly, the kind with warm lighting and comfort food. She dressed in a soft burgundy dress that complemented her growing belly. Davis complimented her appearance, but she could feel that his energy was elsewhere. His eyes drifted to his phone. His responses were short, hollow. But for a brief moment during dessert, he relaxed. They laughed about a memory from their early dating days, the time they tried to cook together and nearly set off the smoke alarm. For a flicker of time, he felt like the man she married. When they got home, she tried to keep the mood warm. But at 10 p.m., his phone buzzed. He checked it so quickly it startled her. "Work," he said before she could ask. He kissed her cheek and went upstairs. She followed a few minutes later, only to find the bedroom empty. Down the hall, the home office light glowed under the door. She considered knocking, considered walking in. Instead, she stood in the hallway, hand over her belly, whispering, "We're okay. Mommy's okay." But she wasn't. Not really. Marbel grew up in a community where women talked openly about relationships, especially the hard parts. Her mother always said, "Marriage isn't easy, baby. Some days you give more than you get. That's part of the promise." But her mother also said, "Don't ignore your instincts. God gave them to you for a reason." So Marbel stood between those two teachings, trying to honor both, desperate not to overreact, scared of reacting too late. She told herself, "He's stressed. He'll come back to me. He loves me. He's trying." She pushed away the memory of the heart emoji next to Vanessa's name. She brushed off the late nights, the secrecy, the headaches he claimed were from work. She wanted to believe the man she married was still there, buried under fatigue, pressure, responsibility, and maybe that was true. But something else was true too. Their connection was thinning. The air between them felt heavier. The warmth in their home wasn't as steady. It wasn't a collapse. It wasn't a blow. It was a slow drift. And that slow drift is more dangerous than sudden storms, because it convinces you that nothing is wrong until you're miles from where you began. One night, the night everything shifted, Marbel woke up at 3:12 a.m. to an empty bed. The room was dim, quiet, lonely. She sat up slowly, letting her hand slide over the sheets where his warmth should have been. "Not again," she whispered. She walked through the house with the soft shuffle of someone tired of disappointment. Down the hallway, past the living room, to the door of the home office. A sliver of light escaped under the frame. Her breath caught. She pushed the door open gently. Inside, Davis was not there. The room was empty, but his computer screen was awake. A messaging window opened. And that was the moment we saw in Chapter 1, the moment this entire story hinges on, the moment her world tilted. The flashback ends right at the threshold of that door, right before she took the step that would change her life. If you believe in trusting your instincts, comment, "My intuition matters." The night before the confrontation felt unusually still. The house was quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet she used to enjoy, but the kind that made her heart feel heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Marbel sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror across the room. Her face looked unfamiliar, not because she was pregnant, not because she was tired, but because she was carrying too many emotions at once. Shock, numbness, anger, sadness, resolve, all layered like thin sheets pressing against her chest. Her baby kicked softly, almost as if sensing her thoughts, as if saying, "Mama, you're not alone." She placed a gentle hand over her belly. "I know," she whispered, voice trembling. "I know, sweetheart. Mama's got to be strong." Her eyes drifted toward Davis's side of the bed. The pillow untouched, blanket neat, a sign that he'd never come home the night before, or had slipped in late and left early. Either way, he hadn't been beside her. Again, that realization didn't sting the same way it once did. The pain had turned into a dull ache, a kind that sits in your chest quietly, reminding you of what you've lost long before you officially lose it. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Davis flickered across the screen. "Running late again today. Big prep meeting. Don't wait up." She stared at the message for a full minute, her emotions twisting into something sharp. Not sadness, not confusion, something closer to clarity. He didn't know she had seen everything. He didn't know she had screenshots. He didn't know she had held their unborn child and silently apologized for the world she was delivering her into. He also didn't know she had divorce papers in her purse at that very moment. She inhaled deeply, a long, steady breath that shook at the edges. "This ends tomorrow," she whispered. Not out of vengeance, not out of rage, but out of self-respect. She stood slowly, her back slightly aching, and walked toward Davis's home office, the same place where she had discovered the truth just days earlier. The room felt different today, as though it held the ghost of that painful moment, as though the air still carried the weight of betrayal. The computer stood dark on the desk, but she could still see the reflection of the messaging window in her mind. Her fingers tightened at her sides. "I'm done waiting," she murmured. On the desk lay her phone, still open to the gallery where she had saved each screenshot. She forced herself to scroll through them again, not to torture herself, but to strengthen her resolve. Message after message, each one more damaging than the last. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." Her chest tightened. "I hate going back to her." A sharp twist of pain. "Same place tomorrow for lunch?" Her stomach dropped again, even though she had already seen it countless times. It didn't get easier. She swallowed hard. "This is the truth," she told herself gently. "I didn't imagine it. I didn't overthink it. I didn't exaggerate anything." A voice, her mother's voice, echoed faintly in her mind. "Don't ignore your instincts, baby." She closed her eyes for a moment and let the silence settle into her bones. Then she opened her purse, placed her phone inside carefully, and reached for the manila envelope resting beside it. Her attorney, Adele Sampson, had handed them to her just days earlier. Marbel had cried in her car afterward. She wasn't crying now. Her fingers ran along the edge of the envelope. It felt heavier than paper, heavier than facts, heavier than ink. It felt like a fork in the road. One path continued the way things were, a life where she doubted herself in her own home, where she felt second to someone else, where she questioned the man she had once loved with her whole soul. The other path was uncertain, scary, lonely. But it was hers. For her baby. For the future she wanted to build in strength, not fear. She slid the envelope securely into her purse and zipped it shut. No hesitation. This was happening. At exactly 9:14 a.m., Her phone rang. She didn't even need to check who it was. Jasmine always called when she sensed something heavy in Marbel's voice. "Hey," Marbel answered softly. "Don't hey me with that tired voice," Jasmine replied. "What's happening? You sound like you didn't sleep." "I didn't," Marbel admitted. "Tomorrow's the day." Silence. A long pause. Then, "Good," Jasmine said firmly. "I'm coming with you." "Jasmine, you don't have to." "Nope. Don't even try it. You're not walking into that building alone while 8 months pregnant and emotionally loaded. I will physically drag you into my car if I have to." Despite everything, Marbel gave a tiny laugh, brittle but real. "You know you're dramatic, right?" "Absolutely," Jasmine said proudly. "And useful. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Wear something comfortable. And don't put on mascara. I don't trust Davis not to start something that'll ruin your makeup." Marbel shook her head, smiling in disbelief at the absurdity and comfort of Jasmine in moments like these. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't thank me yet," Jasmine responded. "You thank me after we're done confronting that man." 20 minutes later, Jasmine arrived, car idling, music softly thumping, hair wrapped in a stylish scarf, face ready for battle. She looked at Marbel and exhaled slowly. "You okay?" she asked gently. "No," Marbel admitted, her voice trembling. "But I'm ready." Jasmine nodded and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "That's all you need to be." The drive to Davis's office felt longer than usual. Marbel stared out the window, watching cars move, watching people cross streets, watching the world continue as though her life wasn't about to split into before and after. Jasmine kept quiet for the first few minutes, a rare moment of silence from her, giving Marbel space to gather herself. Eventually, Jasmine asked softly, "What's the biggest thing you're feeling right now?" Marbel took a breath, a deep one, the kind you take when you're preparing to say something that hurts. "Fear," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of him lying again," she answered. "Of standing there, looking at him, and hearing him say I misunderstood everything, or that I'm being emotional, or that I'm overreacting. I don't want to doubt myself. Not today." Jasmine nods. "You won't. Because you have proof, and you have me, and if he starts gaslighting, I will personally escort him out of his own office." Marbel managed a weak laugh. "What else?" Jasmine asked. Anger flickered behind Marbel's eyes. "I'm angry that I have to do this while pregnant," she said. "I'm angry that he put me in a position where I have to walk into his workplace carrying our baby and our divorce papers. And I'm angry that I still—" She stopped. "Still love him?" Jasmine finished gently. Tears filled Marbel's eyes. She nodded. "That's okay," Jasmine said firmly. "Loving someone doesn't mean accepting betrayal. It just means you're human." Marbel wiped a tear. "I don't want him back," she said quietly. "I just want peace." "And that's what we're walking toward today," Jasmine replied. They parked in the underground garage of Davis's office building. Jasmine helped Marbel out of the car slowly, offering her arm for balance. As they approached the tall glass doors of the building, Marbel felt her breath shorten slightly. Her heart beat quicker. Her hands felt a little shaky. Her stomach tightened. Not from the baby this time, but from sheer adrenaline. Jasmine nudged her gently. "You okay?" "I will be," Marbel said softly. They stepped into the elevator. Jasmine pressed the button for the 25th floor, Davis's executive suite. As the door slid shut, the world outside disappeared. The elevator hummed softly as it ascended. Marbel's heartbeat felt louder than the machine. 10th floor. 11th. 12th. She exhaled slowly. "Whatever happens today," she whispered to herself, "I'm choosing myself." The elevator continued rising. 20th floor. 20. First. Devad Sat, DVA, ND. Jasmine reached over and took her hand. "You're stronger than you think." Marbel swallowed hard. "I have to be," she said, "for my baby." The elevator slowed. Ding. 25th floor. The doors opened with a soft mechanical slide, revealing the lobby of the executive suite. This was it. The moment before the moment. The breath before the storm. The step before the truth. Would you confront them? Comment yes or no. I want to hear your heart. The doors opened to the polished executive lobby, where the air always felt a little too cold and the lighting a little too bright. Marbel stepped out first, moving carefully, one hand resting on her belly for support. Jasmine walked beside her like a protective shield. It wasn't loud or chaotic, but the silence carried weight. The receptionist across the room lifted his head, eyes widening the moment he recognized Marbel. "Mrs. Patterson? Oh, hi. I didn't know you were coming in today." His voice cracked slightly, as though startled by her unexpected appearance. Marbel forced a polite smile. "Good morning." Beside her, Jasmine murmured, "He's already nervous. That tells you everything." The receptionist shifted awkwardly, glancing at the hall that led to Davis's office. It was almost as if he knew something she didn't, or rather, something she now knew all too well. Her pulse quickened. But she kept moving. Every step felt heavier than the last, weighted with months of confusion, fear, betrayal, and resolve. The hallway seemed longer today, the carpet softer beneath her shoes, as if muffling the sound of truth approaching. Mariana, Davis's assistant, looked up from her desk the moment they came into view. She stood so quickly her chair rolled backward and lightly hit the wall. "Oh, Marbel, hi, Her voice trembled. "Morning, Mariana," Marbel said calmly. "You didn't call ahead," Mariana blurted, flustered. "I mean, that's totally fine, you don't have to, but I just—" Jasmine stepped forward, tone sharp but controlled. "We're here to see Davis." Mariana swallowed. "Right, yes. Let me just check if he's—" From down the hallway, laughter drifted out. Two voices. One was Davis, warm, light, almost carefree. The other voice, a woman's, soft, playful, comfortable. "Vanessa." Mariana froze mid-word, eyes flicking down the hall. And that told Marbel everything she needed to know. "There's no need to check," Marbel said quietly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried an undeniable strength. She moved past Mariana before the assistant could respond. Jasmine followed, adjusting her purse strap like she was preparing for a fight she hoped wouldn't come, but was absolutely ready for. Davis's office door was slightly open, just enough for their voices to slip out, just enough for Betrayal to breathe. "You're so terrible," Vanessa giggled, her tone dripping with familiarity. "Only for you," Davis replied. A joke, a flirt, a secret shared. Something twisted deep in Marbel's stomach, not just emotional pain, but a physical ache that pulsed low under her ribs. She pushed the door open fully, and time froze. Davis was leaning casually against his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at her in weeks. Vanessa stood inches away, her red dress hugging her frame, her hand resting lightly on Davis's arm. They both turned. The smile fell off Davis's face instantly. "Marbel?" He choked out, stepping back as though her presence physically struck him. What are you doing here?" His voice wasn't calm. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't loving. It was pure panic. Vanessa blinked rapidly, her posture stiffening the moment she registered who was standing at the door. "Is she?" Vanessa whispered. Marbel stepped fully inside, the door swinging shut behind her. Jasmine positioned herself beside her, silent but fierce. Marbel held her head high. She didn't yell. She didn't break, but her voice trembled with controlled power. "What am I doing here?" she repeated softly. Her eyes locked on Davis. "I came to see my husband." The word husband hit the room like a weight dropped from the ceiling. Vanessa's eyes widened. Husband. Davis swallowed hard. "Vanessa, this isn't, I can explain." Marbel cut him off, her voice slicing through his excuses like a blade. "Oh, please, go ahead. Explain why you're here with her instead of being at home last night, or the night before, or the one before that." Davis's mouth opened, but no words came out. Vanessa stepped back from him, her expression tightening with realization. "You told me you two weren't together anymore," she hissed. "You said you were staying in a guest room, that it was basically over." Jasmine's eyebrows shot up. "A guest room? Interesting, very interesting." Davis ran a nervous hand through his hair. "Okay, everyone needs to just calm down." Marbel let out a short, humorless breath. "Calm down?" she echoed. "I found your messages, your conversations, your lunch plans, your hotel receipts." Davis paled. Jasmine crossed her arms. Oh, now the air got heavy in here. Vanessa turned to Davis, disgust replacing the flirtatious tone she'd had moments earlier. "You lied to me," she snapped. "I don't get involved with married men, Davis." "You are involved with one," Jasmine muttered. "Congratulations." "Jasmine," Marbel said firmly, though her friend's commentary was the only comedic relief keeping her from shaking apart. Davis took a step toward her. "Marbel, just listen to me." "No," she said, raising a hand. "You will listen today." Her voice cracked from emotion, but her spine stayed straight. She felt the baby shift, a reminder of the little life inside her witnessing this moment too. "I'm not just your wife," she said. Her voice rose, steady, heartbreaking, undeniable. "I'm your pregnant wife." The silence afterwards suffocated the room. Vanessa gasped softly, stepping farther back, hand over her mouth. Davis's face collapsed into devastation. "Marbel, please." She wasn't finished. "You have a child on the way, a child you helped create, a child whose heartbeat we heard together. And still, you chose this." Her hand pointed toward Vanessa, though her eyes never left Davis. He looked like he might fall apart physically. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he began. "Oh, it went exactly as far as you let it," she said. Her voice didn't shake anymore. It was steady now. Clear. Cold. Complete. Marbel reached into her purse. The purse she packed with trembling hands that morning. The purse carrying her past, her future, her truth. She pulled out the manila envelope and stepped closer to Davis, close enough for him to see the label on the top page peeking through. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Davis's eyes widened. "No," he whispered, voice cracking. "No, Marbel, please, don't do this. Let's talk, please." She pushed the envelope into his chest. He didn't take it. It fell to the floor between them. A soft sound, but a violent message. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Oops." Vanessa took a shaky step back toward the door, clearly wanting no part in the fallout. Everything inside Marbel ached. Her throat, her chest, her memories, but she stood her ground. "You broke us," she whispered. "I'm just acknowledging what's already true." Davis looked devastated, lost, small. "Marbel, please, I swear I can fix this. I swear I'll end everything. Today, right now. I love you. I love our baby. I'm begging you. Please, don't." He reached for her hand. She pulled it away. "No more lies," she said. Just 4 words, but they hit harder than a scream ever could. Vanessa stared at Davis with pure disbelief. "I can't believe I fell for this," she muttered. Jasmine shrugged. "A lot of women fall for men like him. Don't beat yourself up." Vanessa glared at Jasmine. "I'm not talking to you." "I know," Jasmine replied with a bright, annoying smile. Vanessa turned back to Davis. "You're unbelievable," she spat. "Don't contact me again. Ever." Then she stormed out, heels clicking in fast, angry strides, disappearing down the hallway like a red blur of disappointment. The office fell into a suffocating silence again. Davis sank into the chair behind his desk, burying his face in his hands. His shoulders trembled. "Marbel, I made a mistake," he said through his fingers. "A terrible mistake. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please, please don't give up on us." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she held them back. She took a slow breath, a breath that seemed to carry years of love and months of pain. "I'm not here for an argument," she said quietly. "I'm not here for a fight. I came here to give you the opportunity to face the truth you tried to hide." She stepped backward toward the door. "I'll talk to you when I'm ready," she added. "Not before." Davis's head shot up. "When will that be?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Right now, I need distance. And peace." Her hand found the doorknob. She looked at him one last time, the man she once knew and the man she no longer did. Then she walked out. Jasmine followed her without a word. Behind them, Davis's sobs echoed faintly through the hallway, but they didn't stop. They didn't look back, and they didn't fall apart. Not yet. That part would come next. The hallway outside Davis's office felt colder than it had moments before, or maybe that was just the way shock changed the body, cooling you from the inside out. Marbel's steps were careful, almost mechanical, as she walked toward the elevator. Not fast, not slow, just steady, the kind of movement the body makes when the mind is still catching up. Jasmine stayed right beside her, silent at first, glancing at her with concern that deepened the closer they got to the elevator doors. Neither woman spoke, because there was nothing to say yet. Everything had just shattered, and in the immediate aftermath of destruction, silence often holds the pieces. When they reached the elevator, Jasmine pressed the button. The soft chimes sounded too cheerful for the moment. The doors slid open. They stepped inside. The doors began to close. And that's when it happened. The moment the doors clicked shut, sealing her away from Davis's office, from Vanessa, from the shattered remains of the life she thought she had, Marbel's breath caught. It wasn't a normal inhale. It hit her chest like a blow. A sudden, sharp inhale that broke into pieces halfway through. Her hand flew to her mouth, trembling uncontrollably. Her knees buckled. "Marbel," Jasmine exclaimed, reaching for her. Marbel tried to speak, but the sound that escaped wasn't a word. It was a sob that seemed to tear through her entire body. She collapsed into Jasmine's arms, shaking violently. The weight of everything, the months of confusion, the nights alone, the fear, the shame she never deserved, the betrayal, crashed into her all at once. Her sobs were not soft or delicate. They were raw, guttural, painful, the kind of sobs that come from a place you didn't know existed until life hits you there. Jasmine wrapped both arms around her, steadying her before her legs could completely give way. "I've got you," Jasmine whispered fiercely. "Let it out. Just let it out, honey. I'm right here." Marbel clutched the front of Jasmine's shirt, burying her face into her friend's shoulder as tears poured out uncontrollably. I can't," she gasped between sobs. "It hurts, Jasmine. It hurts so badly." "I know," Jasmine murmured, gently stroking the back of her head. "You've been holding all of this inside. Let it go. I've got you." The elevator hummed quietly as it descended, a strange contrast to the storm taking place inside it. Jasmine tightened her hold. Her voice softened, steady, grounding. "You're safe. You're not alone. You're safe." The sobbing triggered a strong cramp, and Marbel winced sharply, one hand instinctively flying to her belly. Jasmine froze. "You okay? Is it?" Marbel shook her head through her tears. "It's just the stress. Too much. Too fast. Oh, God." Jasmine lowered her gently until she was leaning against the wall of the elevator, supporting her weight carefully. "Slow breaths," Jasmine instructed, her voice steady but her eyes wide with concern. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. Come on, we practiced this." Marbel tried. Her breaths trembled violently, breaking every few seconds. Jasmine kept her voice low. "Your baby needs you to breathe, okay? Follow me." She inhaled slowly, held, exhaled. Marbel tried again. This time, the breath didn't shatter. A second breath followed, then a third. Her tears still flowed, but the panic slowly loosened its grip. "Good," Jasmine whispered. "Good. You're doing so good." The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. But neither woman moved, because Marbel wasn't ready to face the outside world yet. She wasn't ready to stand. She wasn't ready to walk. She wasn't ready to pretend she was okay. She stayed on her knees, leaning into Jasmine, shoulders shaking with smaller, quieter sobs, the tired kind that follow the first avalanche. "Why did he do this?" Marbel whispered. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was the small, broken question of a woman whose trust had been shattered. Jasmine's expression softened with empathy and a protective fury she tried to swallow. "Because he was weak," she said quietly. "Because he made choices he shouldn't have made. Because he forgot the woman he had at home." A tear streamed down Jasmine's cheek, not out of pain for herself, but out of pure love for her friend. "You loved him right," she continued. "You loved him fully. That was never the problem. The problem is he didn't honor that love. But that's on him, not you, never you." Marbel cried harder at that, because somewhere deep inside, even through the betrayal, she had asked herself, "What did I do wrong?" Jasmine continued gently, "You carried this marriage. You supported him. You built a home with him. And now you're carrying his child. You did nothing wrong." Marbel leaned her forehead against Jasmine's shoulder. "I hate this," she whispered. "I know, baby. I know. But this moment, this breakdown right here, this is you releasing months of weight you were never meant to carry alone." Jasmine kissed her forehead softly. "And that's why I'm here," she added. After a few minutes, Marbel wiped her face with trembling hands. "I need a minute," she said quietly. "Take all the time you need," Jasmine replied. They stayed in the elevator, doors open, until Marbel finally took a deep, steady breath and nodded. Jasmine stood first, offering both hands. Slowly, carefully, she helped Marbel up. "You ready?" Jasmine asked softly. "No," Marbel admitted. "But we'll go anyway." "Good enough," Jasmine said. They stepped out of the elevator together. Jasmine kept an arm around her, guiding her gently through the lobby. A few employees glanced over, eyes full of concern, none in judgment. Office gossip had already started on the 25th floor. People knew something happened. Some whispered, some stared, some looked away out of respect, but none of it mattered. Marbel's world had already changed in that elevator. Nothing anyone else thought could hurt her more than what she had already seen. Jasmine drove carefully, avoiding bumps, playing soft music, and glancing at Marbel every few seconds. When they reached the driveway, Elaine's car was already there. Of course it was. Elaine walked out of the house before they even opened the car doors. Her eyes widened when she saw Marbel's tear-stained face and trembling hands. "Oh, baby," Elaine breathed, rushing toward her daughter. The moment Elaine touched her, the tears started again. Quiet, exhausted, but unstoppable. Yvonne stepped out of the house just behind her, still wearing her kitchen apron, holding a box of tissues and a container of homemade soup like she had sensed the exact kind of day this was. "I told her to bring the whole pot," Yvonne muttered, "but she said that was dramatic." Elaine shot Jasmine a look. Jasmine raised both hands. "Don't look at me. I said bring the pot too." Marbel let out the smallest laugh through her tears. Not because anything was funny, but because being surrounded by these women, these pillars in her life, softened the pain enough for her to breathe. Elaine cupped her daughter's face, brushing tears gently with her thumbs. "You're home now," she whispered. "You're safe." Inside the house, Marbel sank onto the couch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping warm tea Elaine placed into her hands. The first buzz came from her purse. Then another, then another. She didn't need to check the phone. She knew who it was. Davis. She finally pulled the phone out. Multiple messages stacked on the lock screen. "Please talk to me. Marbel, I'm begging you. Just hear me out. I swear I'll fix everything. I love you. I love our baby. Please don't give up on us. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Her hands tightened around the phone. Elaine noticed and gently placed a hand over hers. "You don't have to respond," her mother said. "Not today, not tomorrow, not until your heart is ready." Yvonne nodded. Let him sweat. Let him sit with the choices he made. You take care of you and that baby. Jasmine plucked the phone out of Marbel's hands and placed it face down on the table. "Today is not his day," Jasmine declared. "Today is yours." Hours later, after soup, tears, stories, hugs, and the steady presence of women who loved her, Marbel finally found herself alone in her room. She sat on the edge of the bed, one hand resting over her belly. Her eyes were swollen. Her face was tired. Her heart felt bruised in places she didn't know existed. But she wasn't shattered. Not anymore. Her baby kicked softly, a tiny reassurance. She brushed her fingers over her belly and whispered, "I deserve peace." The words didn't tremble. They didn't question. They didn't fear. They landed in the room with quiet strength. Because today, she chose herself, and that choice would shape everything that came next. The morning after the confrontation felt strangely quiet. Not the suffocating quiet that had filled the house before, the kind created by distance, suspicion, and emotional coldness. This quiet felt different. Heavy, yes, but not sharp. It was the quiet of exhaustion, recovery, and the slow processing of what she had lived through. Marbel woke to the sound of soft footsteps outside her bedroom door. When she sat up, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders, she heard familiar voices drifting from the kitchen, her mother's gentle hum and Yvonne's lively commentary as pots clinked and pans sizzled. For a brief moment, she let herself breathe. Not happily, not peacefully, but steadily, and that was something. She shifted to the edge of the bed, one hand resting on her belly. Her baby kicked lightly, almost reassuringly. "I know," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. Mama's trying." She stood slowly and made her way toward the kitchen. The moment she stepped into the kitchen, Elaine turned with a smile that didn't hide the concern behind it. Yvonne, on the other hand, lit up dramatically, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment to unleash her energy. "There she is," Yvonne announced, waving a spatula in the air. "My beautiful niece, survivor of foolish men and messy situations." Elaine rolled her eyes but smiled. "Good morning, baby," she said. "Morning," Marbel replied softly. Her voice cracked a little, but that was normal now. Every emotion lived close to the surface. Yvonne shuffled over with her hands on her hips. "You hungry? I made breakfast, and before you say no, I already put extra cheese in the eggs because that's how you like it. And don't argue, your auntie knows everything." Marbel managed a tiny smile. Thank you. Elaine walked toward her with a warm hug. How's your heart this morning? Fragile, heavy, tired, but she simply said, trying. Elaine kissed her cheek. That's what matters. Before they could settle at the table, the front door flew open hard enough to rattle the hallway mirror. Where is he? Malik's voice boomed from the living room. Where is that man? I'm going to... Oh, Lord, Yvonne muttered. Not this again. Marbel closed her eyes, bracing. Malik stormed into the kitchen wearing sweatpants, a hoodie, and the kind of anger that made his footsteps loud before he even arrived in a room. He looked from Yvonne to Elaine to Marbel, jaw tight, eyes blazing. Tell me where Davis is, Malik demanded. Because I swear I'm about to... Malik, Marbel said softly. No. Don't Malik me, he fired back. You're 8 months pregnant, and he had the nerve to be running around behind your back? Nah, absolutely not. Point me in the direction. Give me 15 minutes and a baseball bat. Yvonne perked up. Oh, you want a weapon? Because I brought my skillet. She patted her purse proudly. Malik blinked. You brought what? My skillet, Yvonne repeated, pulling out a small cast iron pan from her oversized purse. This thing has solved more problems in my lifetime than therapy ever did. Elaine looked horrified. Yvonne, what? I didn't say I was going to use it, I just said I had it, she replied innocently, sliding it back into her purse. Malik pointed at her. I like your spirit. Don't encourage her, Elaine sighed. Marbel rubbed her forehead. You two, please. But Malik wasn't calming yet. He stepped toward her gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. You shouldn't be crying over this man, he said, voice softer now. You shouldn't be losing sleep or peace or breath. You didn't deserve a single moment of what he did to you. A tear slipped down her cheek. I know, she whispered, but fighting him won't fix anything. It'll make me feel better, Malik muttered. It won't make me feel better, she countered. He exhaled heavily, stepping back. Fine, I won't go after him. Today. Yvonne raised a brow. Tomorrow then? Elaine shot her a warning glare. Yvonne murmured. Okay. I'm just saying. Malik leaned against the counter, running his hands through his hair. You tell me if he comes near you and acts wrong. I'll handle the rest. I will, she promised. He nodded, reluctantly accepting that violence would not be happening today. Across town, Davis sat alone in his office, the same office where his world fell apart yesterday. His desk was covered in undone papers. His laptop sat open, screen dark. His suit jacket hung off the back of his chair like he didn't care enough to fix it. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't spoken to anyone except the dozens of unanswered messages he sent to Marbel. And to make the humiliation complete, whispers had already filled the building. Did you hear what happened yesterday? His wife walked in, with divorce papers, and she's pregnant. He deserves it. What a mess. He had never felt so exposed. Every knock on his office door made him wince. Every time someone walked past, he wondered if they were judging him. During the afternoon meeting, when he walked into the conference room, the entire table fell silent. His colleagues glanced between one another, unsure of what to say. One of the interns dropped her pen. Someone else coughed awkwardly. The humiliation burned deep. When the meeting ended, his supervisor pulled him aside subtly. You need to get your head straight, he said gently but firmly. Your work is slipping. And yesterday... Well, it didn't look good. Davis nodded, unable to form a coherent response. Take a few days off, his supervisor suggested. Handle your personal matters. Handle your personal matters. The words echoed like another blow. That evening, unable to sit still, unable to think clearly, Davis found himself standing outside a therapist's office. Not because someone forced him, not because he wanted to check a box, but because for the first time in his life, he couldn't trust his own decisions. His therapist, a calm older man with deliberate speech, listened quietly as Davis poured out everything. The messages, the distance, the loneliness, his mistakes, his guilt, his fear. When Davis finally stopped talking, chest tight, the therapist leaned forward slightly. Are you seeking forgiveness? He asked. Or are you seeking healing? Davis stared at the floor. I don't know, he whispered. I don't want to lose her. The therapist folded his hands. To rebuild anything, you must first rebuild yourself. The truth settled painfully inside him. Later that night, Davis drove to the church he and Marbel once attended together. The one where Pastor John always greeted them with warmth. The one where he once saw his future so clearly. Pastor John was locking the side door when he spotted Davis. He paused, expression shifting from surprise to quiet understanding. "You look like a man carrying a heavy load," the pastor said gently. Davis swallowed hard. "I don't know where else to go." Pastor John unlocked the door again and motioned Davis inside. They sat in the first row, the same row where Davis once held Marbel's hand during Sunday service. "What's on your heart, son?" the pastor asked. The word son nearly broke him. "I hurt her," Davis choked out. "I hurt the woman who loved me, and now she's carrying our child, and I've caused her nothing but pain." Pastor John nodded slowly. "Have you apologized with your words?" he asked. "Yes." "Have you apologized with your actions?" Davis hesitated. "No," he whispered. Pastor John folded his hands thoughtfully. "Then begin there. Words without changed behavior cannot rebuild anything. Marriage is a covenant that requires both accountability and effort." Davis pressed a hand over his face. "What if she never forgives me?" he asked. Pastor John looked at him with deep empathy. "Forgiveness is her journey," he said. "Change is yours." Davis lowered his head, tears slipping down his cheeks silently. He had never felt so stripped of excuses, so painfully aware of the damage he'd caused. While Davis sank into self-reflection, Marbel rested in her room, surrounded by her family, their voices, their laughter, their strength, their love. But even with all the comfort, a heaviness remained in her chest. Healing was not immediate. Healing was not linear. Healing was not gentle. It was slow, messy, unpredictable. She sat on her bed, touching her belly, whispering, "One day at a time." She didn't think about forgiveness. She didn't think about the future. She didn't think about the pain. Just one day at a time, and for the first time in a long time, she felt the smallest flicker of something new inside her. Not hope, not relief, but strength. And that was enough to carry her into the night. The night the crisis happened began quietly, too quietly. Marbel had spent most of the evening fighting waves of fatigue that washed over her in long, heavy stretches. Her legs felt swollen. Her back ached with a deep pull she couldn't shake. Even breathing felt different, as if her body was hinting at something she couldn't yet understand. Elaine and Yvonne had left earlier after spending most of the day with her, and the house finally settled into stillness. She tried to watch a movie to distract herself, but her mind drifted every few minutes, replaying everything that had happened. The office confrontation, the tears, the elevator breakdown, the way she whispered, "I deserve peace," into the quiet. Around 11 p.m., she shut off the TV and waddled toward her bedroom, hoping sleep would bring a little rest. But 2 hours later, she jolted awake with a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. Not the normal stretching or cramping she had grown used to over the past few months. This pain felt wrong, sudden, deep, gripping. She gasped softly and instinctively placed both hands on her belly. "Baby, it's okay. You're okay," she whispered, though her voice shook. When she swung her legs over the side of the bed, she felt something warm rush downward. She froze. Her breath caught. Her heart pounded as she switched on the bedside lamp. Blood. Fresh, alarming blood. God, no, no. She gasped, panic climbing her throat. She reached for her phone immediately. Her first instinct was to call her mother. Of course she would. Elaine always knew what to do. But when she tapped her name, the call went straight to voicemail. Her mom had told her earlier she'd be at an overnight church retreat helping set up for a morning program. No phone service in the retreat hall. Marbel tried again. Voicemail. She swallowed hard as another sharp pain shot through her right side. She wasn't ready to be alone in this moment. Not this moment. Her hands trembled as she opened her contacts list again. Her thumb hovered over one name. She hated how natural the instinct felt. She hated how her heart softened at the thought of him. She hated that despite everything, in this terrifying moment she wanted him, the man who once felt like safety, even when he broke her heart. Davis. For a full 10 seconds she stared at his name, battling hesitation, pride, fear, and necessity all at once. Another pulse of pain bent her forward. She whimpered, clutching her stomach. This wasn't about pride. This was about her child. And whether she was ready to admit it or not, he deserved to know, and she needed help. With a shaking breath, she tapped the call button. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, Marbel. Davis's voice came through immediately, filled with sleep but shifting to alarm in seconds. What's wrong? Are you okay? She struggled to speak through the pain. I'm bleeding. Something's wrong. I need to go to the hospital. He inhaled sharply. Where are you? Are you at home? I'm already leaving. Yes, she whispered. Please hurry. I'm on my way, he said, voice trembling. Stay where you are. I'm coming right now. She ended the call and paced slowly around the room, her hand pressed to her lower belly as discomfort intensified. Fear clawed at her chest. Just stay with me, okay? She whispered to the baby. Just stay with me. Her breathing grew shallow from both the pain and panic. She sank onto the edge of the bed again and pressed her forehead into her palm, silently praying. Minutes felt like hours. But soon, quicker than she expected, she heard frantic knocking at the front door. Marbel, it's me. Open the door. Her legs felt weak, but she made her way down the hallway, leaning heavily on the wall. When she opened the door, Davis nearly stumbled inside, hair messy, shirt half tucked, panic written across his features. The moment he saw the fear and strain on her face, then the small streak of blood trailing down her leg, all the color drained from his. Oh my God, he whispered. Come on, let's go. Lean on me. He scooped one arm around her back, steadying her carefully. Walking felt like moving through thick fog. Every step triggered another shock of pain. I've got you, he whispered. I'm right here. I won't leave you. Normally those words would have sounded hollow to her. But tonight, she didn't argue. Tonight, she couldn't. The drive to the hospital was tense and fast, too fast. At one point she groaned through another wave of pain, clutching the door handle. Slow down, she gasped. Immediately, he eased off the pedal. I'm sorry, he murmured. I can't lose either of you. The trembling in his voice caught her off guard. She had seen Davis scared before, but never like this. He parked by the emergency entrance and rushed around to help her out. A nurse spotted them approaching and hurried over with a wheelchair. What's happening? She asked. Bleeding, Marbel managed to say, her voice weak. The nurse nodded urgently. We'll take care of you. Let's get you inside. As they wheeled her into a brightly lit room, Davis stayed right by her side, gripping her hand as if it were the only thing anchoring him to the earth. He was terrified. She could see it clearly now. And somehow, seeing his fear calmed hers. After being transferred to a monitoring room, a doctor entered, calm, focused, reassuring. They ran quick evaluations, checked the baby's heart rate, and performed an ultrasound. Your baby is doing okay, the doctor said slowly. But the bleeding is from placenta previa, which means the placenta is positioned low. It can cause complications, especially as the pregnancy progresses. Marbel squeezed Davis's hand. She had heard of the condition, but hearing it applied to her made her chest tighten. Is the baby safe? She asked, her voice barely audible. For now, yes, the doctor replied. But you need to stay for monitoring. Bed rest is important, and when it's time for delivery, we'll plan for a C-section. Marbel nodded, tears slipping down her temples. Relief, fear, hope, all tangled in a knot she couldn't untangle right now. After the doctor stepped out, Davis gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. You scared me, he whispered. I scared myself, she replied, voice cracking. He sank onto the chair beside her bed, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. I don't deserve to be here, he said quietly. But I'm grateful you called me. She watched him, shoulders trembling, breath unsteady, guilt weighing every word he spoke. You're still her father, she murmured. I didn't know who else to call. He lifted his head, eyes glassy. You could have called anyone, but you chose me. I won't forget that. She closed her eyes, breathing slow and shallow as the pain began to ease. Later, when the room grew quiet and the monitors beeped steadily, she looked over at him. He had pulled his chair to the side of her bed and sat close enough to rest his forearm gently against hers. Are you okay? He asked softly. She shook her head. Not really. This was the worst night I've had in a long time. He nodded in understanding. I know. But he didn't push. He didn't justify. He didn't defend. He didn't bring up the past. He simply stayed, shoulders slightly slumped, eyes soft, heart humbled. After a while she spoke again. You looked terrified. I was, he admitted. The thought of losing you or the baby. His voice cracked. I don't think I could survive that. Her chest tightened, not from hurt this time, but from something gentler, something she wasn't ready to name yet. I don't hate you, she whispered unexpectedly. His head lifted in slow disbelief. What? I don't hate you. Tears gathered in her eyes. I hate what you did. I hate the lies. I hate that I don't recognize the man who hurt me. But tonight, I saw the man I fell in love with, just for a moment. He closed his eyes as if the words pierced and healed him at the same time. I'm still him, he whispered. I lost my way, but I'm trying. I promise you, I'm trying. She exhaled shakily. I know. Silence settled again, but it wasn't the uncomfortable kind. It wasn't the kind filled with anger or distance. It was a quiet filled with truth, raw, messy truth, for the first time in months. As the monitors hummed softly and the dim lights cast a warm glow over the room, Davis slowly leaned back, exhaustion catching up with him. He dozed off in the chair, head tilted, one hand still wrapped gently around hers even in sleep. She watched him sleep, not with longing, not with forgiveness, not with resentment, just observation. This man had caused so much pain, but tonight he had protected her in her most vulnerable moment. That mattered. She placed her hand lightly over her belly and whispered, We're okay, baby. Mama's okay. For the first time since learning the truth about his betrayal, she felt something like hope, faint, fragile, but present. And sometimes that's where healing begins. If you believe every mother deserves support, comment strength. The day Marbel was discharged from the hospital was both relieving and frightening. She had spent 2 nights under medical supervision, and although the bleeding had stabilized, the doctors were firm. Bed rest, no lifting, no sudden movements, no stress. Stress. She almost laughed at the irony, as if stress were a switch she could flip off. Davis walked beside her as a nurse wheeled her toward the exit. He carried her overnight bag on his shoulder, but what struck her most was how he hovered slightly to her left, subtle enough not to irritate her, but attentive enough to catch her if she swayed. This was unfamiliar. Or maybe it was familiar, but from years ago. As they reached the parking lot, he paused and looked at her. You want the window seat or the back seat? He asked gently. I can sit normally. I'm pregnant, not fragile crystal. He nodded, but his eyes showed worry he wouldn't voice. He opened the passenger door carefully, supporting her hand as she slid into the seat. The car ride home was quiet, filled with a kind of silence that had weight, but not heaviness. It felt like they were both replaying the events of the past 2 nights in their minds, unsure how to talk about the shift happening between them. When they pulled into her driveway, she felt a tug inside her chest. This had been her sanctuary, her place of healing, her place of separation. Now Davis was stepping inside again, but under entirely different circumstances. He helped her out of the car and guided her into the house. She stood in the living room for a moment, resting her hand on the wall. Do you want to lie down? He asked softly. Yes, she breathed. Please. He supported her carefully down the hallway and into her bedroom. As she settled into the bed, he pulled the blankets over her feet. She watched him for a moment. He seemed different, quieter, humbler, slower in the way he moved, almost afraid to do anything wrong. Thank you, she said softly. He nodded, eyes warm but cautious. I'll be in the guest room if you need anything. She opened her mouth, unsure of her own reply. You don't have to stay in the room the whole time, she said slowly. I may need help, so being close makes sense. He nodded, grateful without showing too much relief. I'll keep the door open. As he stepped away, she realized something. His presence didn't suffocate her anymore. It didn't sting the same way. It didn't trigger the same ache. Something subtle had shifted. But healing isn't a straight line. It's a series of gentle, uncertain steps. The next morning she woke to the smell of oatmeal, cinnamon, honey, a little nutmeg, the way she liked it. Davis knocked lightly on the doorframe. Are you awake? I made breakfast. She blinked at him, surprised. You cooked? He lifted a small tray. Attempted, no promises. She chuckled softly despite herself. Come in. He set the tray beside her, adjusting the pillows behind her back. His movements weren't perfect. He fumbled with the pillow, almost knocking the tray over, but he tried. He truly tried. After breakfast, he cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry, and wiped down the counters. When she tried to get up later to stretch, he appeared instantly. Hold on. You're supposed to stay in bed. I'm walking 3 steps, she protested. 3 steps too many, he countered gently. She gave him a playful glare. You're acting like the pregnancy police. He shrugged. If the badge fits. She snorted, a sound she hadn't made in weeks. He blinked, startled by the sound, then his face softened. You haven't laughed like that in a while, he said gently. She looked down at her hands. I haven't had much to laugh about. He nodded, guilt flashing briefly in his eyes, but he didn't make the moment about him. Instead, he took a deep breath and said, Then I'll try to change that. Bit by bit. She didn't respond, but something in her chest warmed at the sincerity. Over the next few days, Davis fell naturally into a caregiver routine. He brought her meals at the same times each day. He carried laundry baskets even when she said she could fold clothes herself. He checked her medication reminders. He gently rubbed her swollen feet without her asking. He helped her adjust her sleeping pillows at night so she could breathe easier. There were times she wanted to send him back to the guest room just to breathe, and times she wanted to cry because seeing him care made old wounds ache. But most surprising were the times she found comfort in his presence. One afternoon, she shifted in bed uncomfortably. You okay? He asked. Just pressure, she murmured. He didn't bombard her with questions. He didn't panic. He simply sat beside her. Tell me if you need anything, he said. The simplicity of it soothed her. A few nights later, she woke around 3 a.m. craving water. She slowly sat up, careful not to strain her abdomen. She meant to grab her water bottle, but instinctively she listened first. The house was quiet, but faintly. She heard a sound coming from the nursery down the hall. A soft creak, a gentle inhale. She furrowed her brow and eased herself out of bed carefully, holding onto the wall as she made her way down the hallway. When she reached the nursery door, she saw light spilling softly into the passage. She peeked in, and the sight stole her breath. Davis sat in the rocking chair, the one they picked together before everything fell apart, holding one of the tiny newborn blankets against his chest. His head was bowed. His shoulders trembled. He was crying, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, the kind of crying that comes from deep, unspoken hurt. She watched him wipe his face with the back of his hand. His voice broke softly as he whispered into the empty room. I'm trying. I swear I'm trying. I want to be better for her, and for you. He pressed a little blanket to his forehead the way a child might hold a cherished keepsake. I don't know if she'll ever forgive me, he whispered, but I'll spend the rest of my life making sure she never feels abandoned again. Not Marbel, not our baby. Her breath hitched in her chest. She wasn't supposed to hear this. She wasn't supposed to witness this private pain, yet she couldn't move. For the first time, she saw the man stripped of ego, stripped of excuses, stripped of charm. Just raw remorse, vulnerability, love, fear, hope. He wasn't performing. He wasn't persuading. This was the Davis she once trusted, the Davis who held her hand 6 years ago at that community cleaned-up event. The Davis who cried when she surprised him with the pregnancy test. The Davis she thought she lost. Her heart squeezed, painfully, beautifully. When she accidentally shifted her weight, the floor creaked. Davis turned sharply, eyes red, startled. Marbel, he whispered, wiping his face hurriedly. She stepped into the room and leaned against the doorframe. I was getting water, she said softly. He nodded, embarrassed. You, okay, he asked, voice strained. She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing every fracture and every effort stitched into the man before her. I didn't know you came in here, she said. He glanced around the nursery, then back at her. I come in most nights, just to think and pray and hope. She swallowed. The silence between them felt full of 1,000 unsaid truths. You really care, she finally said, not as a question, but as an observation. His voice softened. With everything in me. Her eyes grew glossy. But caring isn't the same as loving. I know, his voice broke. And loving isn't the same as doing right. I know that too. They stood there for a long moment, her leaning on the doorframe, him sitting in the rocking chair holding the tiny blanket. 2 people who had been broken by each other, 2 people connected by a child not yet born, 2 people trying, carefully, quietly, to find their way back to something steady. Not romance, not forgiveness, not yet love, just humanity. gentleness, truth. Over the next several days, Davis's consistency was impossible to ignore. He didn't overstep. He didn't push conversations about the relationship. He didn't ask for emotional rewards. He just showed up every morning, every afternoon, every evening. Every time she needed help getting out of bed or lowering herself into a chair. Every time the baby kicked and she winced. Every time she struggled emotionally and tried to hide it, he showed up. And gradually, Marbel's heart began to shift, not because she forgot the betrayal, but because she saw true accountability. One afternoon, as she adjusted the pillow beneath her back, she looked at him and said quietly, "You've changed." He froze. "In what way?" he asked, afraid to breathe. "You're softer," she said. "You're present. You're listening. You're not rushing through everything like before." He nodded slowly. "I had to face myself," he admitted. It wasn't pretty. She believed him. For the first time in months, she believed him. He sat slowly on the chair beside her bed. "I know I hurt you," he said, "more deeply than I'll ever understand, and I don't expect anything from you. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, nothing." He inhaled, steadying himself. "But I want to earn whatever version of peace you'll allow, even if it's just co-parenting." She held his gaze. "I'm not promising anything," she said honestly. "I'm not asking," he replied gently. She exhaled, long and tired. "Good," she whispered. But inside her heart, something tender, something she thought was gone forever, flickered back to life. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of its return. And sometimes, the smallest flicker is enough to light the entire path of healing. The morning of the scheduled C-section arrived quietly, without drama, without alarms, just a soft light filtering through Marbel's curtains and the rhythmic ticking of the clock on her wall. For a moment she forgot where she was, then her hand drifted to her belly, now low, heavy, and full of the baby she had been fighting to protect. She inhaled deeply, steadying her nerves. Today was the day she would finally meet the little girl who had already changed her life long before taking her first breath. Outside her bedroom she heard faint movement, the careful kind. Davis. He was up early. She could hear him quietly placing dishes in the sink, opening and closing cabinets in slow motion so the sounds wouldn't travel. He had done this every morning the past several weeks, learning the pattern of the house the way a caretaker might learn the rhythm of their patient. But today wasn't just any day. Today was a day that would carve itself into their lives forever. She took another breath, then called softly, "Davis?" Footsteps hurried toward her room. He stopped at the doorway, his hair slightly messy, his shirt halfway tucked, his expression gentle and alert. "You okay?" he asked immediately. She nodded slowly. It's time." His breath caught, and for a moment he simply stared at her. Not in fear, not in panic, but in awe, as if he was seeing the magnitude of this moment all at once. "Okay," he finally said, voice steadier than she expected. "I'll get everything ready." They left the house before sunrise, the sky still painted in shades of deep blue. The air was cool, quiet, and still. As they drove through the sleeping streets, Marbel counted her breaths to stay calm. Davis kept his eyes on the road, but glanced at her every few seconds. "You feeling all right?" he asked softly. "A little nervous," she admitted. "That's normal," he replied. Then, after a pause, "You're going to do great." She looked at him. His voice wasn't shaky. He wasn't rambling or overcompensating. He was calm, strong, present. It surprised her how much comfort that brought her. As they approached the hospital, he reached out carefully, not taking her hand but offering his palm near hers, leaving the choice to her. She hesitated, but then she placed her hand in his. He didn't squeeze too hard. He didn't tremble. He just held her, steady. Inside the hospital, nurses led her to a preparation room. The smell of disinfectant, the crisp air, the pale walls, everything made her heart race a little. She changed into the hospital gown with the help of a nurse. When Davis stepped back into the room, she could see the nervous energy simmering beneath his calm expression. "You good?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "Only because you're here." She shook her head lightly. "I'm the one having surgery." He nodded. "Exactly. And you're being braver than I ever could." That made her lips curve slightly. She wasn't trying to be brave, she was simply trying to breathe. But hearing him say that mattered. When the anesthesiologist entered, explaining the process and the spinal block, Marbel listened carefully, nodding. Davis stayed quiet but close, absorbing every word. "Dad, you'll be seated right beside her," the nurse said. The word "Dad" hit him, visibly. His chest lifted. His eyes softened. Marbel watched the shift happen. He wasn't just preparing to witness childbirth. He was becoming a father, a real one, not just biologically, emotionally, spiritually, wholly. The operating room was colder, filled with beeping monitors, metal trays, and bright lights. Nurses bustled around in practiced choreography. The doctor greeted her warmly and began preparing. The spinal anesthesia went in smoothly, though the pressure made her wince. "You okay?" Davis whispered, leaning close. "Yeah," she breathed. "Just weird." "You're doing amazing," he murmured. Once the lower half of her body went numb, they positioned a curtain to block her view of the surgery area. Davis sat beside her, wearing full blue scrubs, a cap, and a mask, with only his eyes visible. He looked at her with a softness she hadn't seen in months. "You ready to meet her?" he asked. Her throat tightened. "I think so." He reached for her hand again, and this time she held it first. The doctor began the procedure, talking her through each step. She felt pressure but no pain. Davis never looked away from her face. "I'm right here," he repeated under his breath, as if grounding both of them. Then, a shift in the room, a change in the doctor's voice, a subtle, electric tension. "Okay, Mom," the doctor said gently. "You're about to meet your little girl." Marbel's breath hitched. Davis's grip tightened, not painfully, but with shared anticipation. Then she heard it, a sound she would never forget. A sharp, powerful cry sliced through the room. Her heart shattered and rebuilt in the same moment. "Oh my God," she whispered, tears spilling instantly. Davis made a noise she had never heard from him, a broken, joyous gasp that came from somewhere deep inside. "Is she—" Marbel choked. "She's perfect," the doctor said. A nurse held up their daughter, tiny, red-faced, strong-lunged, for just a moment before carrying her to the warmer. Davis stood abruptly, torn between staying with Marbel and seeing the baby. "Go," she whispered. "Stay with her." He hesitated for half a second, then gently squeezed her hand and hurried over. Marbel watched him, this man she loved, hated, grieved, and now cautiously hoped for, as he leaned over their daughter. "Hi, baby girl," he whispered, voice cracking. "It's Daddy. I'm right here." Something inside Marbel trembled. She had seen Davis charming. She had seen him angry, apologetic, broken, lost, but she had never seen him like this, humbled, softened, devoted, present in a way no one could fake. The nurse wrapped the baby and brought her to Marbel's chest. When the tiny body touched hers, Marbel sobbed, the kind of sob that comes from the deepest parts of a person's soul. "Hi, Amara," she whispered shakily. "Hi, my sweet girl." Davis hurried back to her side, tears streaking behind his mask, eyes wide with awe and fear and gratitude. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She is," Marbel replied, stroking the baby's cheek. Then she looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since the betrayal, she saw the man he was trying to be, a father, a partner, a person capable of change. Something warm softened inside her chest. Not forgiveness, not a clean slate, but a doorway, cracked open, not wide, allowing something new to breathe. As the medical team finished the procedure and prepared to transfer her to recovery, Davis placed his trembling hand gently over Amara's back. He whispered, "Thank you for calling me that night. Thank you for letting me be here." She swallowed hard. "I didn't do it for you," she said softly. "I did it for her." "I know," he whispered, "but it still saved me." She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment she allowed herself to feel something she had been afraid to feel. Hope. Not because everything was repaired, not because he had earned redemption, not because the past was wiped clean, but because in this room, holding their daughter, she saw truth in his eyes, a truth that mattered, a truth that might someday heal what had been broken. Comment, new beginnings. If you believe life gives second chances. The first week home with baby Amara was a blur of soft cries, feedings, diaper changes, and sleepless nights that somehow felt both exhausting and sacred. Marbel had expected to feel overwhelmed, and she did, but she hadn't expected the quiet comfort of watching Davis step into fatherhood with a sincerity that surprised her daily. He wasn't perfect, He wasn't trying to perform. He was simply present, at all hours, without complaint. On the first night back home, when Amara whimpered around 2 a.m., Marbel tried to sit up to reach her bassinet, a struggle after the C-section. But Davis was already there, scooping her gently. "I've got her," he whispered, swaying with the baby in his arms. Somehow the sight stole her breath. He looked unsure, tender, protective, a mix that made him seem human in a way she needed to see. He laid Amara in Marbel's arms for breastfeeding and sat quietly by the edge of the bed, watching her with humility she had never seen before. He didn't hover or instruct. He simply existed in support. That was new. That mattered. But trust wasn't magically restored. It was a slow climb, sometimes upward, sometimes slipping. A few weeks after Amara's birth, Marbel sat at the kitchen table one morning, sipping warm tea while Amara napped. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. She had been thinking all night, turning over thoughts, memories, fears. When Davis entered the kitchen holding a fresh stack of folded burp cloths, she cleared her throat. "I want us to try counseling." He froze, burp cloths in hand. He blinked, once, twice, as if making sure he heard correctly. "Together?" he asked, voice careful. "Yes." He swallowed hard. "Marbel, thank you. Thank you for even considering." "Don't thank me," she cut in gently. "This isn't a reunion. This is work, hard work, and we start from zero." He nodded quickly. "Zero. Whatever you need." She stared into her tea. "I'm doing it because I don't want resentment to poison our co-parenting. And because there's still something inside me that wants to understand how we got here." Davis set the burp cloths down slowly, emotion flickering across his face. "I'll go. Whenever you say. However often you say. Whatever comes up, I'll face it." She looked at him. "For once," she said quietly, "I believe you." Their first session took place in a small office with soft lighting, a gray sofa, and a counselor whose calm presence filled the room without effort. Marbel sat with her arms crossed, not in defiance but in defense. Davis sat upright, hands clasped, afraid to breathe incorrectly. The counselor began gently. "Tell me why you're here." Marbel went first. "I want clarity, not answers, clarity. I lived months feeling invisible while being pregnant. I want to understand how the person who promised to protect me became the source of the biggest hurt of my life." Her eyes glistened, but her voice didn't waver. The counselor nodded, then turned to Davis. "And you?" Davis's throat bobbed as he inhaled. "I'm here because I hurt the best person I've ever known. I let fear and ego drown my judgment. I told myself lies until I couldn't recognize myself anymore. And I don't want to be that man ever again. Not for me, not for Marbel, not for our daughter." His voice cracked. Marbel looked down at her hands, fighting the sting behind her eyes. Hearing him take accountability without excuses was healing and painful all at once. The counselor guided them through discussions about communication failures, emotional disconnects, Davis's fear of inadequacy as a father, and Marbel's long season of loneliness before the affair began. At one point, Davis turned to her, eyes red. "I didn't cheat because you weren't enough. I cheated because I wasn't enough." Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. "I didn't need perfection," she whispered. "I needed honesty." The counselor let the room breathe in that truth. Their session lasted an hour, but it felt like they held years of buried hurt and unspoken emotion between them. And yet, they left the building with lighter steps. Counseling didn't fix anything instantly, but something had begun, and beginnings matter. In the weeks that followed, raising Amara became a rhythm, messy, unpredictable, exhausting, but strangely bonding. One night, Amara refused to sleep. Refused. She squirmed, fussed, stretched her tiny arms out with the fierceness of someone 3 times her size. Marbel groaned in frustration. Why is she fighting sleep like she pays bills? Davis laughed, really laughed, and Marbel realized they hadn't laughed together since before the betrayal. "Come here, tiny CEO," he joked, lifting Amara. "Running the whole household already." "Don't call her CEO," Marbel said, shaking her head. "I don't need her negotiating bedtime." They both cracked up quietly, trying not to wake the baby further. These weren't grand moments, just small human ones. But sometimes the smallest moments repair the deepest fractures. Another evening, while Marbel was pumping breast milk, the machine made a loud rhythmic suction sound. Davis looked up and said, Why does it sound like it's beatboxing? She burst into laughter so sudden she nearly spilled the milk. It felt strange and good to laugh with him again, like rediscovering a forgotten part of herself. Later, while washing Amara's bottles side by side, she caught him glancing at her, not in apology, not in fear, but in admiration. "What?" she asked cautiously. He shook his head softly. "You're incredible," he whispered. She didn't respond, but her heart fluttered in a way she didn't invite, yet didn't shut out. One evening, the kind of quiet evening where the air feels warmer than usual, they sat on the living room floor. Amara lay between them on a soft blanket, kicking her legs in excitement at the little rattling toy in Davis's hand. Marbel watched them, father and daughter, and felt something deep inside her shift. Amara giggled loudly when Davis made a silly whooshing noise. Marbel laughed too. Their eyes met. Not long, not intense, just long enough to acknowledge that something was changing. Slowly, carefully, honestly. Later, as they cleaned up the toys, Davis spoke quietly. "Sometimes I look at her," he said, "and I can't believe we made something this perfect. And then I look at you, and I remember why." Her breath caught. She didn't know what to say, so she didn't say anything. But she didn't walk away either. Their counseling sessions continued. Some were painful, some were frustrating, some were unexpectedly warm. One session even brought laughter when the counselor asked them to reenact how they communicate during disagreements. Marbel exaggerated dramatically. "You never used words. You used grunts, and eye twitches, and silence." Davis held up both hands. "Okay, I did grunt. I didn't realize how much until now." Even the counselor chuckled. Other sessions left them emotionally drained as they confronted deeper truths. Davis's childhood, the pressure he carried as the provider, Marbel's abandonment wound triggered by his actions. Through it all, Davis never walked out, never shut down, never deflected. He faced every hard truth with humility, and that mattered more than he understood. One night, after Amara finally fell asleep, Marbel stood by her crib, watching the gentle rise and fall of her tiny chest. Davis stepped behind her, careful not to crowd. "She looks so peaceful," he whispered. "She does," Marbel said, brushing her finger lightly along Amara's small hand. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned slightly, just slightly, toward him. He didn't move, didn't assume, didn't reach for her. He simply stayed still, letting her decide how much closeness she wanted. She didn't lean away. That tiny act, so small it might not have mattered to someone else, meant everything in their story. Healing wasn't a single moment. It was a collection of small ones, moments like this. Moments they built not as a couple, yet, but as partners in rebuilding trust. Marbel exhaled softly and whispered, "I'm not the same woman I was before all this." Davis nodded. "I know, and I'm not ready to love the same way I did." "I understand," he said, voice steady. "But I'm beginning to see the man you're becoming." His breath caught, so quietly she barely heard it. And for the first time since she served him divorce papers in his office, he allowed himself to hope, just a little. Spring settled gently over the neighborhood, bringing warm breezes and small blossoms along the sidewalks. Weeks had passed since Amara's birth, and life had fallen into a rhythm that felt surprisingly peaceful. Not perfect, not effortless, but steady. And that steadiness mattered more than perfection ever had. Marbel sat on the back porch one morning, rocking Amara in her arms while sipping lukewarm tea. Birds chirped somewhere in the distance, the sunlight brushing against her skin like a soft blessing. She watched her daughter yawn a tiny dramatic yawn before drifting into sleep again. A shadow passed across the porch. Davis stepped outside, wiping his hands with a kitchen towel. "Breakfast is ready," he said quietly. "I made the oatmeal the same way you like it." She nodded, smiling a little. "Thank you." He sat on the porch step, close but not too close, elbows resting on his knees. "Therapy today," he said gently. "You still okay with going?" "Yes," she replied. "I think it's helping." He looked at her, not with expectation, not with fear, but with gratitude. "Me too." Silence settled between them, not awkward, but reflective. The kind of silence you share with someone who knows your wounds and still chooses gentleness. Amara made a tiny squeak in her sleep. Both parents melted instantly. "We made a good one," Davis whispered. "Yes," Marbel said, brushing Amara's cheek. "We did." Later that afternoon, Marbel and Davis sat in the familiar counseling room. Soft lighting, quiet music humming in the background, and the counselor's calm presence guiding them. Today's session was different. The counselor leaned forward slightly. Marbel, how do you feel your relationship has evolved since the birth of your daughter? She hesitated, searching for the truth inside herself. I feel safer, she admitted. Not fully healed, not fully trusting, but safe enough to breathe without bracing for disappointment. Davis looked down, blinking hard. And Davis, the counselor asked, what have you learned about love during this process? He inhaled deeply. I learned that love isn't something you protect by keeping secrets. It's something you honor by showing up, consistently, truthfully, even when you're scared. His voice trembled slightly. And I learned that remorse doesn't mean anything unless you change what caused the damage. The counselor nodded slowly, then turned to Marbel. Do you feel he's changing? She didn't answer immediately. She looked at Davis, the man who had broken her heart, the man who had held her hand through surgery, the man who cried in the nursery at 3 a.m. Yes, she said finally. I do. The room fell silent, the kind of silence where healing breathes. The counselor smiled gently. Then maybe it's time to ask each other what you want moving forward. Marbel felt a flutter in her stomach, a mix of fear and possibility. Later, as they walked to the car, Davis glanced at her cautiously. What do you want, Marbel? He asked. She inhaled slowly, watching a soft breeze ripple through the trees. I want peace, she said. I want stability for Amara, and I want the freedom to choose us again, not out of pressure but out of desire. He swallowed hard. Does choosing us again feel possible? She turned to him. Yes, she whispered. For the first time, it feels possible. His breath hitched, quietly, reverently, as if he had heard the first note of a second chance. But possibility wasn't a guarantee. It was an invitation, and he treated it like one. A few days later, Davis told Marbel he wanted to take her and Amara to a nearby park, the same park where they once spent lazy Sunday afternoons before life complicated everything. She agreed hesitantly, curious but cautious. The park was bright with afternoon sunlight, filled with kids playing soccer, joggers passing by, and families lounging on picnic blankets. Davis carried the diaper bag, while Marbel held Amara close to her chest. They walked slowly toward a quiet area under a large oak tree, the same tree where they once dreamt aloud about their future. Marbel looked around, confused. Why here? She asked. Davis didn't answer immediately. He took a deep breath. Then, with Amara nestled carefully in one arm, he lowered himself onto one knee. Her breath caught. Davis. He held up a gentle hand, not to silence her, but to steady himself. I'm not doing this to rush you. I'm not asking for a promise you can't make yet. His eyes glistened. I'm doing this to tell you something I should have said a long time ago. He shifted Amara slightly, supporting her tiny head with his large trembling hand. I choose you, he whispered. Not because we had a baby, not because counseling told us to talk, not because I want to erase the past. I can't. I choose you because even after everything, loving you still feels like the truest thing I've ever known. Tears filled Marbel's eyes. He continued, I don't want the old marriage back. It wasn't honest. It wasn't safe. I want a new marriage, one built on truth this time, one built on real partnership, one you never have to doubt. He lowered his head for a moment, steadying his breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness today. I'm asking for the chance to keep showing you who I'm becoming, and the chance to earn the right to stand beside you again. He opened his hand slightly, revealing a simple silver band. No grand spectacle, no crowd, just sincerity. Marbel, he said softly, whenever your heart is ready, will you consider renewing our vows? Her heart pounded, not in fear but in something tender, unfamiliar, and hopeful. She looked at him, the man kneeling with their daughter in his arms, humbled by his mistakes, strengthened by growth, softened by love. Yes, she whispered, tears falling freely. Yes, Davis, I'll consider it. A relieved, broken, joyful laugh escaped him. Thank you, he whispered. He stood slowly and kissed Amara's tiny forehead, the symbol of their new life, their new chapter. Then Marbel stepped into his arms, carefully, cautiously, beautifully, allowing herself to lean into him for the first time in a long time. 2 weeks later, surrounded only by family and close friends, they stood in her mother's backyard, the same place where she spent her childhood, found comfort after heartbreak, and rebuilt her strength. The ceremony was simple. A white cloth draped over the garden fence. Soft music playing from a small speaker. Yvonne wiping tears while muttering, "I swear I ain't gon' cry." "Okay, maybe a little." Malik standing nearby with a protective stance, but a subtle smile. Elaine fanning herself while whispering prayers of gratitude. Marbel wore a modest cream dress. Davis wore a clean white shirt and gray slacks. Amara rested in her grandmother's arms, dressed in a tiny yellow dress that made everyone melt. Pastor John stood before them, a quiet smile on his face. "Renewing vows doesn't erase the past," he said gently. "It acknowledges it and chooses to grow from it." Davis took Marbel's hands, shaky, warm, reverent. "I vow to love you with honesty," he whispered, "with presence, with humility, and with the knowledge that love is proven through action, not words." Marbel inhaled slowly, feeling a peace she hadn't known in months. "I vow to love carefully," she replied, "to communicate, to forgive slowly but truthfully, and to build something new with you, something healthy, honest, and rooted in real partnership." Pastor John nodded and blessed them. The family applauded quietly. Davis leaned down and kissed Marbel's forehead, the gentlest promise of all. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magical. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was real. And real love, the kind that survives storms, is worth more than perfection. Later that evening, after the guests left and Amara finally fell asleep, Marbel stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. She noticed something on the welcome mat. A plain envelope, no name, no return address. Her stomach tightened. She opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Her eyes widened as she read the first line. "You don't know the full truth about what happened." Her breath froze. There was more. Someone knew something. Something she wasn't told. Something that could change everything. Again. And just like that, a new story began. If this story touched you, comment hope and share it so others can be inspired.